I don't need your pity. The billionaire's words cut through the rain like ice, but Ryan Carter didn't move. Behind him, his 6-year-old daughter waited in their rusted truck. Ahead, Evelyn Sinclair, the woman whose face graced every business magazine in America, sat trapped in a wheelchair, soaked and furious, as Seattle's storm flooded the streets around her. Everyone else had walked past. Ryan should have too, but something in her eyes stopped him. Not the wealth, not the power. Something broken that he recognized from his own mirror. If you want to see how a construction worker and a CEO built something money couldn't buy, stay until the end. Hit like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The rain hammered Seattle like it had a grudge. Not the gentle Pacific Northwest mist that tourists complained about. This was the kind of downpour that turned streets into rivers and made people run for cover without looking back. Ryan Carter didn't run. He sat in his truck outside Madison Elementary, engine off to save gas, watching the doors through a windshield that leaked near the passenger side. His work boots were caked in dried concrete. His hands, scarred from years of construction, gripped a steering wheel held together with electrical tape. The clock on the dashboard blinked 3:47 p.m. Sophie's class let out at 3:45. Any minute now, she'd come bursting through those doors with her crooked backpack and that smile that made every brutal shift worth it. 6 years old, and she still believed the world was good. Still believed her dad could fix anything. Ryan didn't have the heart to tell her he was barely holding their lives together with duct tape and prayer. The windshield wipers scraped across the glass in uneven strokes. Another thing he needed to replace but couldn't afford. Through the smeared water, he saw the stream of parents arriving in their clean sedans and SUVs. Some had drivers. Most had lives that didn't require choosing between groceries and electricity. His phone buzzed. Third notice from the landlord. He silenced it without reading. The school doors opened and kids poured out like a dam breaking. Ryan sat up, scanning for the pink raincoat he'd found at Goodwill last month. There. Sophie spotted the truck and her face lit up like Christmas morning. She said something to the teacher, then ran through the rain with her backpack bouncing against her small frame. Ryan leaned across and pushed open the passenger door. Sophie climbed in, water dripping everywhere, grinning like she'd won the lottery. "Daddy, guess what happened today?" "Let me guess," Ryan said, pulling her seatbelt across. "You invented a time machine and brought me tomorrow's lottery numbers?" Sophie giggled. "No, Mrs. Patterson said my story about the dragon was the best in the whole class." "Of course it was." Ryan's chest tightened with pride. "You're the best writer in this whole city." She put it on the wall with the gold star stickers. "That's my girl." He started the engine. It coughed twice before catching. "How about we celebrate with mac and cheese tonight?" "The good kind? With the powder? Is there any other kind?" Sophie's smile could have powered the whole truck. She didn't know that mac and cheese from a box cost 99 cents, and that was all Ryan could afford until Friday's paycheck. She just knew her dad was making her favorite dinner. They pulled onto Madison Street, joining the crawl of after-school traffic. The rain had intensified, turning everything beyond the windshield into a blur of gray and chrome. Sophie chattered about her day, something about a boy named Marcus who ate paste and a girl named Emma who had a puppy, while Ryan navigated through streets he could drive blindfolded. Seattle had been home for 32 years. Born here, raised here, met Sophie's mother here, married her at City Hall with 2 witnesses and no money for a reception. Lost her here too, 3 years ago, when cancer decided 30 wasn't too young and a 6-month prognosis wasn't too cruel. Some days Ryan could barely remember her face. Other days, like when Sophie laughed a certain way or tilted her head at that exact angle, Sarah was so present it hurt to breathe. "Daddy, you're doing the quiet thing again." Ryan blinked. "Sorry, kiddo, what were you saying?" "I asked if we could get a puppy. Emma's puppy is really small, and it doesn't eat much, and Sophie, and I would walk it every day and clean up after it, and Soph." She stopped, bottom lip jutting out. "You're going to say no." "I'm going to say let's talk about it when we're not living in a place where pets cost extra rent we don't have." Ryan softened his voice. "But I promise, when things get better, you always say when things get better." Sophie turned to stare out the window. Things never get better. The words hit harder than any punch Ryan had taken. 6 years old and already learning that hope was expensive. "Hey." He reached over and squeezed her hand. "Things will get better, I promise." Sophie didn't answer. She just watched the rain race down her window while Ryan tried to figure out how to keep a promise he had no business making. They were stopped at a red light on 4th Avenue when Sophie suddenly sat up. "Daddy, look!" Ryan followed her pointing finger. Through the rain, barely visible near the curb outside a cafe, a figure in a wheelchair seemed to be struggling. The wheels were caught in the flooding gutter. People rushed past with umbrellas, heads down, nobody stopping. The light turned green. Cars behind them honked. Ryan should have driven on, should have kept going like everyone else. He had his own problems, a daughter to feed, bills to pay, a life that didn't leave room for other people's emergencies. But something made him pull over. "Stay here," he told Sophie, already opening the door. "But Daddy, lock the doors. I'll be right back." The rain hit him like a wall. Within seconds, he was soaked through his work jacket, water streaming down his face as he jogged across the sidewalk. Up close, he could see the wheelchair's wheels were jammed against the curb where the street flooded. The woman sitting in it had stopped fighting, just sitting there with her head down while rain plastered her dark hair against her face. "You need help?" Ryan called over the storm. The woman's head snapped up. Even through the rain, Ryan could see her eyes, sharp, intelligent, and absolutely furious. Not at the situation, at him. "I'm fine." Her voice could have frozen the rain. "I don't need—" "Your wheels are stuck." "I know my wheels are stuck." She gripped the rims, trying again to force them backward. "I can handle it." Ryan watched her struggle for 3 seconds before stepping into the flooded gutter. Water soaked through his boots immediately, but he'd been wet since he got out of the truck. "Don't!" The woman's voice sharpened. "Don't you dare!" Ryan grabbed the wheelchair handles and pulled. The wheels came free with a sucking sound. He pushed her back onto the dry sidewalk under the cafe awning, then stepped away with his hands up. "There. That's it. I'm gone." He turned to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Wait." Ryan looked back. The woman was staring at him with an expression he couldn't read. This close, out of the direct rain, he could see her properly. Maybe 30 years old. Expensive-looking coat that was probably ruined now. The kind of face that belonged on magazine covers. Sharp cheekbones, full lips, eyes that seemed to catalog everything in one glance. Those eyes were currently taking him apart piece by piece. "I didn't mean—" She stopped, something flickering across her face. "Thank you. Most people just walked past." "Most people are late for wherever they're going," Ryan said. "You okay? Do I look okay?" The bitterness in her voice was so raw it made Ryan flinch. "I'm sitting in a wheelchair in the rain because my driver got stuck in traffic and I thought I could manage 10 feet by myself. Clearly, I was wrong. Everyone needs help sometimes. Not everyone." She looked away, jaw tight. "Some of us built entire companies without asking for anything." Ryan didn't know what to say to that. Through the cafe window behind her, he could see his truck at the curb with Sophie's face pressed against the glass, watching. "My kid's waiting," he said. "You need me to call someone? A cab or—" "My driver's 2 minutes away." The woman's voice had returned to ice. "You can go." Ryan hesitated. Something about the way she sat there, proud and broken and absolutely refusing to show how much she was hurting, made him want to stay. But Sophie was alone in the truck, and this woman clearly wanted him gone. "Okay then?" He started back toward the street. "What's your name?" The question caught him off guard. Ryan turned back. "What?" "Your name." She was looking at him with those razor-sharp eyes again. "The man who stopped when everyone else walked by? What do I call him?" Ryan Carter. Evelyn Sinclair." She didn't offer her hand. "Thank you for not leaving me to drown, Ryan Carter." The name hit him like cold water. Evelyn Sinclair. Even someone who didn't follow business news knew that name. The billionaire CEO who'd built a tech empire before she was 30. The woman Forbes called Seattle's most powerful under 35. The face on every business magazine and charity gala announcement. And apparently the person currently soaked and furious in a wheelchair outside a random cafe. Ryan's face must have shown his recognition because something shuddered in Evelyn's expression. "Now you know who I am." Her voice flattened. "Let me guess, you want a photo? An autograph? Maybe you'd like to tell your friends you saved the poor crippled billionaire. I want to get back to my daughter before she thinks I abandoned her in a parking spot," Ryan cut in. "That's it. Evelyn blinked. That's it? That's it. Ryan was already walking backward toward his truck. Hope your driver gets here soon. He didn't wait for a response. The rain swallowed him as he jogged across the street, yanked open the truck door, and climbed inside. Sophie immediately grabbed his soaking sleeve. Is that lady okay? She will be. Ryan started the engine. This time it caught on the first try, which felt like a minor miracle. Her ride's coming. Why was she all by herself? I don't know, kiddo. Everyone needs somebody, Sophie said with the absolute certainty of a 6-year-old who'd never learned that the world didn't work that way. That's what you always tell me. Ryan glanced in the rearview mirror as he pulled away from the curb. Through the rain, he could just make out Evelyn Sinclair sitting under the cafe awning, still alone, staring at something only she could see. Yeah, he said quietly. That's what I tell you. They drove home through the storm while Sophie went back to chattering about her day. Ryan made the appropriate sounds at the right moments, but his mind kept drifting back to those furious, broken eyes. He'd probably never see Evelyn Sinclair again. That would have been fine with Ryan. He had enough trouble keeping his own life together without worrying about billionaires who looked like they were drowning even when they weren't in the rain. Their apartment was on the 3rd floor of a building that had seen better decades. The elevator had been broken since August. Ryan carried Sophie on his shoulders up the stairs because she liked it, and because it made her laugh when he pretended to be out of breath at the top. You're getting too big for this, he gasped dramatically, setting her down outside their door. You say that every time. Because every time it's more true. Inside, the apartment was exactly as they'd left it that morning. Small, clean, and holding together through sheer force of will. 2 bedrooms barely bigger than closets. A kitchen that Ryan had learned to cook in through necessity and YouTube videos. A living room with a couch from Craigslist and a TV that only worked if you hit it at the right angle. Sophie dropped her backpack and ran to her room. Ryan hung his wet jacket on a hook that was slowly pulling out of the drywall, then stood in the kitchen staring at the cabinet where he kept the mac and cheese boxes. 3 left. He'd bought a 12-pack last week. His phone buzzed again. Same landlord, same threat about rent that was 5 days late. Ryan silenced it and started boiling water. Daddy, Sophie called from her room. Can you help me with my homework? After dinner. He dumped the pasta into the pot. Go wash your hands. While Sophie splashed around in the bathroom, Ryan's mind wandered back to the afternoon, to Evelyn Sinclair and her wheelchair and the way she'd looked at him like he'd committed some crime by helping. He understood that look. Pride was sometimes all you had left when everything else got taken away. Sophie emerged with wet hands and helped set the table. 2 plates, 2 forks, 2 cups of water, because juice was for special occasions. They ate together while she told him more about her day, details expanding with each retelling until Ryan was pretty sure the dragon story had grown wings and learned to speak French. After dinner, they tackled homework. Basic addition that Sophie flew through, then a reading assignment that had her sounding out words with her finger tracing each line. Ryan sat beside her on the couch, helping when she stumbled, praising every success. By 8 o'clock, Sophie was in her pajamas with her teeth brushed and her favorite stuffed bear tucked under one arm. Story? She asked hopefully. Ryan's entire body ached from the workday. His mind was already calculating tomorrow's problems, the job site in Ballard, the inspection that would probably get delayed again, the paycheck that wouldn't stretch far enough no matter how he divided it. But Sophie was looking at him with those eyes that still believed in dragons and happy endings. One story, he agreed. She scrambled into bed while Ryan settled into the chair beside her. He didn't need a book. Sarah had started this tradition, making up stories on the spot, building whole worlds out of nothing but imagination and love. After she died, Ryan kept it going because it was the one thing that still connected all 3 of them. Once upon a time, Ryan began, there was a knight who wasn't very good at being a knight. Sophie giggled. Why not? Because he kept helping people instead of fighting dragons. The king would say, go fight the dragon. And the knight would get distracted helping an old woman carry her groceries, or he'd stop to fix a broken fence, or he'd help someone in a wheelchair, Sophie suggested. Ryan paused. Yeah, something like that. And then what happened? Well, all the other knights made fun of him, said he wasn't a real knight because he didn't fight enough battles. But the knight didn't care. He knew that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is help someone who needs it, even when everyone else walks by. Did he ever fight a dragon? Maybe, but that's not what made him brave. Sophie considered this seriously. What made him brave? Showing up, Ryan said quietly. Every single day, even when it was hard. Sophie yawned, her eyes already drooping. I think he was a good knight. Me too, kiddo. Within minutes, she was asleep. Ryan sat there watching her breathe, this small, perfect person who trusted him to keep the world safe. Some days he had no idea how he was going to manage it, but he'd figure it out. He always did. Ryan stood, tucked the blanket around Sophie's shoulders, and left her door cracked so the hallway light wouldn't wake her. Then he went to the kitchen and stared at the bills stacked on the counter. Rent, 5 days late. Electric, due in a week. Sophie's school field trip, $30 he didn't have. His phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't the landlord. Carter, it's Morrison. His site supervisor's voice was gravel and exhaustion. We got a problem with tomorrow's job. Ryan's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Inspection got moved up. They're coming at 7 a.m. instead of noon. That's good, right? We can finish early. We're not ready. Foundation's not fully set. If they see it like this, they'll shut us down. Ryan closed his eyes. How many guys can you get there by 5 a.m.? 5 a.m.? Morrison laughed, but there was no humor in it. Carter, nobody's gonna... I'll be there. Get whoever else you can. You sure? That's gonna be a hell of a day. I'm sure. After Morrison hung up, Ryan stood in his dark kitchen and did the math. Asleep by 10 if he was lucky. Up at 4 to beat traffic. On site by 5 for 2 hours of brutal work before the regular shift even started. Home by 8 p.m. if nothing went wrong. Everything always went wrong. But the alternative was losing the job, and Ryan couldn't afford that. Literally couldn't afford it. He checked on Sophie one more time, still sleeping, still peaceful, then got ready for bed. His body felt like it had been through a compactor. Tomorrow would be worse. As he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, Ryan's mind drifted back to Evelyn Sinclair one more time. He wondered if she'd made it home okay, if her driver had showed up, if she was sitting in some penthouse somewhere, probably not giving a second thought to the construction worker who'd pulled her wheelchair out of a puddle. That was fine. Their worlds were so far apart, they might as well have been different planets. Ryan closed his eyes and tried to sleep. He had 4 hours before he had to get up and prove, once again, that he was brave enough to keep showing up. Even when everything hurt, even when the odds were impossible, even when nobody else would notice if he didn't. The alarm went off at 4 a.m. like a punishment. Ryan dragged himself out of bed, moving on autopilot. Shower. Coffee so strong it could strip paint. 2 pieces of toast because breakfast was important even when you were too tired to taste it. Sophie's door was still closed. She wouldn't wake up for another 2 hours. Ryan had already arranged for Mrs. Chen downstairs to walk her to the bus stop, a favor he'd returned by fixing her sink this weekend. He left a note on the kitchen table. Gone early for work. Love you. Be good. Dad. Then he grabbed his lunch, peanut butter sandwich, apple, water bottle, and headed out into the Seattle darkness. The job site was in Ballard, a neighborhood that was getting fancy enough that construction workers like Ryan couldn't afford to live there anymore. The foundation they were pouring belonged to someone's dream house, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, a kitchen that probably cost more than Ryan made in a year. He arrived at 4:47 a.m. Morrison was already there, looking like he'd slept in his truck. You're a crazy bastard, Morrison greeted him. Tell me something I don't know. They worked in the dark, headlamps cutting through the pre-dawn. 2 other guys showed up around 5:15, Jackson and Tommy, both young enough to still think missing sleep was an adventure. They mixed concrete while Ryan and Morrison worked on leveling the forms. The rain had stopped, but everything was soaked. The ground was mud. The wood was slippery. Every task took twice as long and 3 times the effort. By the time the inspector showed up at 7 a.m. sharp, they were ready. Barely. Ryan stood off to the side, covered in dried concrete and mud, while the inspector walked around making notes on a clipboard. Morrison did the talking. Ryan just tried to stay upright. Looks good, the inspector finally said. You're cleared to continue. The relief was physical. Ryan felt his shoulders drop 3 inches. After the inspector left, Morrison clapped Ryan on the back hard enough to bruise. Couldn't have done it without you showing up. Yeah, well, Ryan was already thinking about the regular 8-hour shift that was about to start. Let's just hope the rest of the day is boring. It wasn't. A delivery truck got stuck in the mud and had to be towed out, eating 2 hours. The plumber showed up with the wrong fixtures and had to go back to the supplier. One of the nail guns jammed, and Ryan spent 45 minutes taking it apart and putting it back together while everyone else stood around waiting. By the time 6 p.m. rolled around, Ryan had been working for 13 hours straight. His hands were shaking from exhaustion when he signed out. Morrison tried to talk to him about next week's schedule, but Ryan's brain had stopped processing words somewhere around hour 11. He drove home through rush hour traffic, barely aware of his surroundings. Everything was automatic: hands on wheel, foot on gas, eyes on road. His mind had gone somewhere else entirely. The truck found its way to their street like it knew the route by heart. Ryan parked, turned off the engine, and sat there for a full minute, trying to remember why he was doing this. Then he pictured Sophie's face and remembered. Upstairs, Mrs. Chen had already brought Sophie home. His daughter was at the kitchen table doing homework, and the old woman was making tea. "You look terrible," Mrs. Chen said in her blunt way. "Long day." "Too long." She poured tea into a chipped mug and handed it to him. "You keep working like this, you'll collapse." "I'll be fine." Stubborn. But she said it fondly, patting his arm on her way out. "Sophie already ate. I made extra dumplings." After she left, Ryan sat at the table with his daughter while she finished her math homework. He should probably eat. Should definitely shower. Should do 100 things. Instead, he just sat there, being present, because that was all he had energy for. "Daddy?" Sophie looked up from her worksheet. "Are you okay?" "Just tired, kiddo." "You're always tired." Ryan didn't have an answer for that. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Probably spam. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Is this Ryan Carter?" The voice was female, professional, unfamiliar. "Yeah, who's this?" "My name is Patricia Morrison. I'm calling on behalf of Evelyn Sinclair." Ryan's exhausted brain took a moment to connect the dots. What?" "Ms. Sinclair would like to speak with you. Would you be available tomorrow at 2 p.m.? "For what?" She didn't specify. She simply asked me to arrange a meeting. Ryan looked at Sophie, who was watching him curiously, looked at the bills on the counter, looked at his reflection in the dark window, a 32-year-old man who'd been running on empty for so long he'd forgotten what full felt like. "I work until 5, he said. "Ms. Sinclair is flexible. Would 6 p.m. work better?" No, 6 p.m. wouldn't work better. 6 p.m. was dinner with Sophie and homework and bedtime stories and the few precious hours Ryan had to be a father instead of just a worker. "Listen, I don't know what this is about, but she's offering to compensate you for your time." Ryan almost laughed. "I don't need money for pulling a wheelchair out of a puddle." "Nevertheless, she'd like to speak with you. If you could provide an address, she'll send a car." Something in Patricia's voice made Ryan pause. Not the words themselves, but the careful way she was saying them. Like this wasn't a simple thank you. Like Evelyn Sinclair wanted something. And Ryan Carter, despite being dead on his feet and having no business getting involved with billionaires, heard himself say, "Tomorrow at 6. I'll text you the address." "Excellent. The car will arrive promptly." After she hung up, Ryan sat there staring at his phone. "Who was that?" Sophie asked. "I have no idea," Ryan said honestly. But he had a feeling his life was about to get a lot more complicated, and he had no energy left to figure out if that was good or bad. The black Mercedes that arrived at exactly 6 p.m. the next evening looked like it cost more than Ryan's entire apartment building. Sophie pressed her face against their living room window, eyes wide. "That's the biggest car I've ever seen," she breathed. Ryan checked his reflection one more time in the bathroom mirror. He'd showered, shaved, and put on his only button-down shirt. The one he wore to job interviews and Sophie's school conferences. It didn't quite hide the exhaustion carved into his face or the calluses on his hands, but it was the best he could do. "Mrs. Chen's gonna be here any minute," he told Sophie, grabbing his jacket. "Where are you going?" "Just a meeting. I'll be back before bedtime." "Is it about work?" Ryan hesitated. He didn't know what this was about. "Something like that." The doorbell rang and Mrs. Chen appeared, already settling onto the couch with her knitting. She waved Ryan away without looking up. "Go, we'll be fine." Outside, a driver in a perfect suit stood beside the Mercedes with the back door already open. He nodded at Ryan without expression. "Mr. Carter, that's me." Ryan climbed into the back seat, which smelled like leather and money. The door closed with the kind of solid thunk that regular car doors aspired to. They drove through Seattle in silence. Ryan watched the city slide past. His city, the place he'd lived his entire life, suddenly looking different through tinted windows. The driver navigated through downtown like he'd memorized every traffic light, heading toward the waterfront where the buildings got taller and the rent got stupid. They pulled up to a high-rise that was all glass and steel, the kind of place with a doorman and a fountain in the lobby. Ryan's work crew had built the foundation for a building like this once. He'd never imagined being inside one. "Ms. Sinclair is on the 40th floor," the driver said, the first words he'd spoken since Ryan got in the car. "The elevator code is 4001. Ryan stepped out onto a sidewalk so clean it looked staged. The doorman held the door without being asked. Inside, the lobby was marble and chrome, all sharp angles and expensive art that Ryan didn't understand. The elevator was faster than it had any right to be. His ears popped as it climbed, floor numbers ticking by on a digital display. When the doors opened on 40, Ryan stepped into a hallway that was just one door, one apartment, the entire floor. He knocked, half expecting another assistant or driver or whatever wealthy people had. Instead, the door opened and Evelyn Sinclair stood there, without the wheelchair. She was leaning on a cane, but she was standing, upright. The expensive coat was gone, replaced by dark slacks and a simple white blouse. Her hair was pulled back. The fury from 2 days ago had been replaced by something more controlled, but Ryan could still see the sharp edges underneath. "You came," she said. "Your assistant was very persuasive." Evelyn's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Patricia's good at her job. Come in." The apartment was exactly what Ryan expected, and somehow worse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, furniture that probably had Italian names, a kitchen with appliances Ryan couldn't identify. Everything was immaculate, expensive, and completely impersonal. It looked like a hotel suite, not a home. "You want something to drink?" Evelyn asked, already moving toward the kitchen. Her gait was careful, measured. The cane tapped against the hardwood with each step. "I'm good. I have water, coffee, probably some juice that's been in there since before the accident. Water's fine." She poured 2 glasses while Ryan stood awkwardly in the massive living room, hands in his pockets, trying not to touch anything. Evelyn returned and handed him the glass, then gestured toward the couch. "Sit. Please. You're making me nervous standing there like you're about to run." Ryan sat. The couch was more comfortable than his bed. Evelyn settled into a chair across from him, setting her cane within reach. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Through the windows, Seattle was turning orange and gold as the sun set over the Sound. "I didn't know if you'd actually come," Evelyn finally said. "I didn't know if I should. But you did anyway. You went through a lot of trouble to track me down." Ryan took a sip of water. It tasted like regular water, which was somehow disappointing. "Figure that deserves at least a conversation." Evelyn studied him with those sharp eyes. "Patricia found you in about 20 minutes. Construction worker, single father, lives in Capitol Hill. She's thorough." "That's not creepy at all. It's efficient." But Evelyn's voice softened slightly. "I wanted to say thank you, properly, not standing in the rain while I was being an ungrateful—" "You weren't ungrateful. You were embarrassed." The words hung between them. Evelyn's expression shifted, something cracking in the controlled facade. "Yes," she said quietly. "I was." Ryan set down his water glass. "Listen, you don't need to thank me. I pulled a wheelchair out of a puddle. That's it. You don't owe me dinner or money or whatever this is." "What if I'm not trying to pay you back?" Evelyn leaned forward slightly. "What if I'm asking for help?" That stopped Ryan cold. "Help with what?" "Physical therapy." "I'm not a physical therapist." "I know. I have 3 of those. They're all excellent. They're also all professionals who get paid to be encouraging and supportive and lie to me about my progress." Ryan frowned. "Why would they lie?" "Because I'm Evelyn Sinclair." The bitterness was back in her voice. "Because I sign their checks. Because telling the CEO she's not trying hard enough is a good way to get fired. So fire them and hire someone who'll tell you the truth." Evelyn laughed, sharp and humorless. You think I haven't tried? I've gone through 7 therapists in 4 months. They all say the same things, use the same tone, treat me like I'm made of glass. Maybe you need to find better therapists. Or maybe, Evelyn said, meeting his eyes, I need someone who doesn't know who I am. Someone who isn't afraid to tell me when I'm being lazy or making excuses. Someone who stopped in the rain because it was the right thing to do, not because they wanted something from me. Ryan stared at her. You want me to be your physical therapist. I want you to be honest with me. The therapy part I can handle. Lady, I work construction 60 hours a week and raise a 6-year-old. I don't have time to— Mornings, Evelyn interrupted. Before your shift, I'll pay you double whatever you make at the job site. You don't even know what I make. Patricia found that out too. $18.50 an hour. I'll pay you $40. Ryan's brain stuttered over that number. $40 an hour. For what? Showing up? Being honest? Why me? He asked. Evelyn was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, smaller. Because when you helped me, you didn't look at me like I was broken. You just looked at me like I was stuck. There's a difference. Ryan thought about Sophie asking why that lady was all alone, about his own reflection in the window, exhausted and barely holding on, about how pride was sometimes the only thing keeping you upright when everything else wanted you to fall. I'm not qualified for this, he said. Neither am I. Evelyn gestured at her leg. 6 months ago, I was running a company worth $3 billion. Now I can barely walk across my own living room without wanting to throw something. You want to talk about not qualified? That's different. How? Ryan didn't have an answer. Evelyn stood, gripping her cane, and walked to the window. Her reflection overlaid the city lights, creating a double image, the powerful CEO and the woman struggling to stay balanced. The accident was 4 months ago, she said without turning around. Drunk driver ran a red light. My car flipped 3 times. The driver walked away with a broken arm. I got 2 shattered vertebrae and nerve damage that might never fully heal. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Evelyn's voice went flat. The doctors are sorry. The board is sorry. The shareholders are sorry. My family, what's left of it, is very, very sorry. But sorry doesn't make my legs work. No, Ryan said. It doesn't. The doctors say I'll walk again, maybe even normally if I do the work. But it's been 4 months and I'm still using a cane and I'm so tired of people being gentle with me. She turned and Ryan could see the frustration burning in her eyes. I don't want gentle. I want to get better. Ryan stood up, crossing to where she stood by the window. You know what I think? What? I think you're scared that if you really try and you still can't do it, then all those people being gentle were right, that maybe you are broken. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Get out. See? That right there. That's what I'm talking about. I said get out. Ryan didn't move. You asked for honesty. Here it is. You're not broken. You're hurt. There's a difference, but you're so busy being angry at everyone for treating you different that you're making it impossible for anyone to actually help. You don't know anything about me. I know you called me here because nobody else will tell you what you need to hear. I know you're standing by this window at sunset because you're too stubborn to sit down, even though your leg is probably killing you right now. And I know you're going to fire me in about 30 seconds because I just said all that out loud. They stared at each other. Evelyn's hand was white-knuckled on the cane. Ryan could see her breathing hard, anger and something else warring across her face. Then she laughed. It wasn't a happy laugh. It was sharp and painful and real. I hate that you're right, she said. Yeah, well, it's a gift. Evelyn made her way back to the chair and lowered herself down carefully. Ryan sat back on the couch. The tension in the room had shifted into something different. Not comfortable exactly, but less hostile. My therapy sessions are at 6 a.m., Evelyn said after a moment. 3 days a week. Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You'd need to be here by 5:30. Ryan did the math. 5:30 meant leaving his apartment by 5, which meant waking up at 4, which meant even less sleep than he was already not getting. I can't do 3 days, he said. I've got Sophie, but I could do Tuesdays and Thursdays, 6 a.m. That's only 2 days. Take it or leave it. Evelyn considered this. You drive a hard bargain for someone who isn't qualified. I'm a fast learner. Fine. Tuesday and Thursday, 6 a.m. Don't be late. I'm never late. We'll see. Evelyn picked up her phone. Give me your address. I'll have a car pick you up. I can drive myself. At 5 in the morning? The parking garage here is a nightmare. Ryan was about to argue, then realized he was being stupid. If she wanted to send a car, let her send a car. Fine. He gave her the address, watching as she typed it into her phone with quick, precise movements. Everything about Evelyn was controlled, measured, like she was constantly holding herself together through sheer force of will. Ryan knew that feeling better than he wanted to admit. One more thing, Evelyn said, setting her phone down. This doesn't leave this apartment. I don't need the press finding out I hired a construction worker as a therapy assistant. They'd have a field day. I'm not interested in talking to the press. Good, because if this gets out, it won't. Ryan stood up. I should get back. Sophie's probably driving Mrs. Chen crazy by now. Your daughter. It wasn't a question, but Ryan answered anyway. Yeah. How old? 6. Something flickered across Evelyn's face. And her mother? Dead, 3 years. The bluntness of it seemed to catch Evelyn off guard. I'm sorry. So was everyone else. Ryan headed toward the door, then paused. See you Tuesday morning. Ryan? He turned back. Evelyn was still sitting in the chair, cane across her lap, looking smaller than someone of her reputation had any right to look. Thank you. For being honest. You're paying me to be honest. Thank me after you've dealt with me for a few weeks. On the way down in the elevator, Ryan's phone buzzed. A notification from his bank. Evelyn had already transferred the first week's payment, $640 for 8 hours of work. Ryan stared at the number until the elevator reached the lobby. He could pay rent with that, could catch up on the electric bill, could maybe, finally, stop choosing between groceries and everything else. The Mercedes was waiting outside. Ryan climbed in, mind racing with everything he'd just agreed to. The driver pulled into traffic and Ryan watched the city pass by again, wondering what the hell he'd gotten himself into. When he got home, Sophie was already in her pajamas, building something elaborate with blocks on the living room floor. How was your meeting? Mrs. Chen asked, packing up her knitting. Weird, Ryan said honestly. Good weird or bad weird? I have no idea. After Mrs. Chen left, Ryan sat on the floor with Sophie and helped her finish the block tower. She chattered about her day while he tried to focus, but his mind kept drifting back to Evelyn's apartment. To the sharp pain in her voice when she talked about the accident. To the way she'd looked at him like he was the first person in months to see her as something other than a headline. Daddy? Sophie was looking at him with concern. You're doing the quiet thing again. Sorry, kiddo, what were you saying? I asked if we could have pancakes for breakfast tomorrow. Tomorrow, Tuesday, which meant 5 a.m. wake up, car to Evelyn's therapy session, then straight to the job site for a full shift. Ryan was already exhausted just thinking about it. Sure, he said. Pancakes sound good. Sophie beamed and went back to her blocks. Ryan watched her play, trying to remember the last time he'd made a decision that didn't feel like choosing between bad and worse. His phone buzzed again. A text from an unknown number. Don't forget, 5:30 a.m. And bring coffee, the good kind. Ryan typed back. I don't know what the good kind is. Her response came immediately. Then we're going to have problems. Despite everything, Ryan smiled. Yeah, this was definitely going to be interesting. The alarm went off at 4 a.m. on Tuesday, and Ryan immediately regretted every decision that had led to this moment. He dragged himself through the morning routine, shower, coffee, check on Sophie, who was still sleeping peacefully. Left a note for Mrs. Chen, who'd agreed to handle morning duty. Grabbed his work bag because he'd have to go straight to the job site after. The Mercedes arrived at exactly 5 a.m. The driver, a different one this time, greeted him with a nod, and they drove through empty Seattle streets while the city was still dark. Ryan used the time to down the rest of his coffee and try to wake up his brain. He had no idea what he was supposed to do once he got there. Just be honest, that couldn't be all of it. The elevator ride to the 40th floor felt faster this time. When the doors opened, Evelyn was already in the living room doing stretches on a yoga mat. She was wearing athletic clothes and her hair was pulled back in a ponytail. The cane was propped against the wall nearby. "You're early," she said without looking up. "You said 5:30. I said be here by 5:30. Most people interpret that as arrive at 5:35. I'm not most people." Evelyn glanced at him. "No, you're not." She finished her stretch and stood, reaching for the cane. "Did you bring coffee?" Ryan held up the thermos he'd filled at home. "Fair warning, it's construction-grade coffee. It'll either wake you up or kill you." "Perfect." Evelyn gestured toward the kitchen. "Mugs are in the cabinet above the sink." He poured 2 cups while Evelyn finished her stretches. The coffee was exactly as advertised, strong enough to strip paint. Evelyn took 1 sip and made a face. "This is terrible." "You asked for the good kind. I brought the kind that works. There's a difference between functional and good. Welcome to my world." Evelyn studied him over the rim of her mug. "You say things like that a lot. Little comments about your life being hard. Is that supposed to make me feel bad for being rich?" Ryan set down his coffee. "No. It's supposed to remind both of us that we live in completely different worlds, and this whole arrangement is kind of insane. Fair enough?" Evelyn walked over to a section of the living room that had been converted into a therapy space. There were resistance bands, a balance board, some weights. "My regular therapist arrives at 7:30. We have 2 hours before then." "To do what?" "Whatever you think I need." Ryan looked at the equipment, then at Evelyn, then back at the equipment. "I have no idea what you need. I'm not a therapist." "But you're not afraid to tell me the truth." Evelyn set down her mug and picked up a resistance band. "So watch me do my regular routine and tell me what you see." For the next 20 minutes, Ryan watched Evelyn work through a series of exercises: leg lifts, stretches, balance work. She was careful, precise, and clearly in pain, even though she was trying to hide it. "Okay, stop," Ryan said finally. Evelyn paused mid-stretch. "What?" "You're babying it." "Excuse me?" "Your left leg. Every time you put weight on it, you're shifting to compensate. You're doing the exercises, but you're not actually pushing yourself." Evelyn's eyes narrowed. "The therapist said to work within my comfort zone." "Yeah, well, your comfort zone isn't getting you anywhere." Ryan walked over and crouched next to her. "Can I?" She hesitated, then nodded. Ryan touched her left leg lightly, feeling the tension in the muscles. "Everything's locked up because you're protecting it. You need to trust it to hold weight." "It hurts when I trust it." "It's going to hurt either way. At least this way you'll get stronger." Evelyn stared at him. "You've been here 20 minutes and you're already telling me to push through pain?" "You asked for honest. I'm being honest. My therapist would never—" "Your therapist isn't here. I am. And from where I'm standing, you're going through the motions, but you're not actually trying to get better." The words landed hard. Ryan could see Evelyn's jaw tighten, her hands clench. For a second, he thought she was going to throw the resistance band at his head. Instead, she said, "Show me." "Show you what?" "How to actually do it right." Ryan wasn't expecting that. "I'm not—" "You said I'm babying it. Fine. Show me what not babying it looks like." So Ryan did. He talked her through the same exercise, but this time he made her shift her weight properly. Made her hold positions even when she wanted to quit. Pushed her past the point where her professional therapist probably would have let her rest. Evelyn's face was tight with pain and effort, sweat beading on her forehead. But she didn't quit, didn't complain, just gritted her teeth and kept going. After 45 minutes, Ryan called it. "That's enough. I can keep going." "Yeah, and then you'll collapse and blame me. We're done." Evelyn lowered herself onto the mat, breathing hard. "That was brutal. That was honest." She laughed, sharp and breathless. "I hate you a little bit right now." "Good. Means we're making progress." They sat there for a moment, both catching their breath. Through the windows, Seattle was starting to wake up, the sky turning from black to gray. "My regular therapist is going to notice I'm exhausted," Evelyn said. "So tell him you did extra work." "He'll ask why." "Tell him the truth, that you hired someone to push you harder." Evelyn considered this. "He'll think I'm crazy." "You are crazy. You hired a construction worker to yell at you at 6 in the morning. "I didn't hire you to yell at me." "Give it time." Evelyn smiled, actually smiled. It transformed her entire face, made her look younger and less like someone carrying the weight of a $3 billion company. Ryan's phone buzzed. Morrison, asking where he was. I need to go, he said, standing. Job site opens in 30 minutes. Same time Thursday? Same time Thursday. Ryan headed for the door, then turned back. Evelyn was still on the mat, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. You did good today, he said. You're just saying that. No, I'm being honest. There's a difference. After he left, Ryan rode the elevator down, thinking about the look on Evelyn's face when he'd pushed her past her limits. Not anger, not resentment, something closer to relief, like she'd been waiting for someone to stop treating her like glass. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm that was exhausting but weirdly sustainable. Tuesday and Thursday mornings, Ryan showed up at 5:30. They'd spend 2 hours pushing Evelyn through exercises that left her sweating and swearing. Then Ryan would grab the coffee she'd started buying specifically for him, the good kind, which turned out to mean expensive beans and a machine that probably cost more than his truck, and head to the job site. The days were brutal. Ryan was running on 5 hours of sleep and stubbornness. But the paychecks kept coming, and for the first time in 3 years, he wasn't choosing between rent and electricity. Sophie noticed the change. More groceries in the fridge. New shoes when her old ones got too small. A yes instead of maybe when she asked for things. Did you get a new job? She asked one night over dinner. Sort of, Ryan said, which wasn't technically a lie. Is it a good job? Ryan thought about Evelyn's apartment and the Mercedes and the $40 an hour. Thought about the way Evelyn looked at him like he was the only person in her life who wasn't afraid of her. Yeah, he said. I think it might be. The third week, everything changed. Ryan showed up Thursday morning to find Evelyn sitting on the couch instead of stretching on the mat. She wasn't in workout clothes. She was wearing business attire, and her expression was carefully blank. What's wrong? Ryan asked. We need to talk. Those 4 words never meant anything good. Ryan set down his work bag and sat in the chair across from her. Okay, talk. Evelyn took a breath. My therapist knows about you. I thought you told him. I did. He wasn't happy about it, but that's not the problem. She looked at him directly. He says I've made more progress in the last 3 weeks than I did in the previous 3 months. Ryan waited for the other shoe to drop. The board heard about it, Evelyn continued. They want to meet you. Why? Because if you're helping me recover, they want to make sure you're not going to turn around and sell the story to the press, or blackmail me, or I'm not going to do any of that. I know, but they don't know you. Evelyn's hands were clasped tight in her lap. They want you to sign an NDA, and they want to do a background check. Ryan felt something cold settle in his stomach. A background check. Standard procedure. They do it for everyone who works closely with me. I'm not an employee. I'm a guy who shows up twice a week. You're more than that, and we both know it. The words hung between them. Ryan thought about Sophie, about their quiet life, about how hard he'd worked to keep his world separate from this one. What if I say no? He asked. Then this ends. Evelyn's voice was steady, but Ryan could hear the crack underneath. The board will insist. If I fight them, they'll make my life hell. And honestly, I'm too tired to fight everyone at once. Ryan stood up and walked to the window. 40 floors below, Seattle was waking up. People going to work, living their normal lives, not caught between 2 worlds that were never supposed to touch. I get it, he said finally. You've got a company to run, a reputation to protect. I'm just some guy. Don't. Evelyn's voice was sharp. Don't finish that sentence. Ryan turned. Evelyn had stood up, gripping her cane, and for once the controlled facade was completely gone. You're not just some guy, she said. You're the person who actually gives a damn whether I get better, who doesn't lie to make me feel good, who shows up at 5:30 in the morning because you said you would. Yeah, and now your board wants to investigate me like I'm some kind of threat. So let them. You've got nothing to hide, right? Ryan thought about the eviction notice from 2 years ago that he'd barely avoided. The maxed out credit cards, the car payment he'd missed before catching up. Nothing illegal, nothing terrible. Just the messy reality of being poor and trying not to drown. But having billionaire lawyers dig through his life? That was different. I need to think about it, he said. Evelyn's expression shuddered. Fine.
Take your time. Ryan grabbed his bag and headed for the door. In the elevator, he pulled out his phone and stared at the messages from Morrison, from Mrs. Chen, from Sophie's school about the field trip he'd finally been able to pay for. His life was just starting to stabilize. Getting tangled up with corporate lawyers and NDAs could destroy that in ways he couldn't predict.
But walking away meant leaving Evelyn alone with therapists who wouldn't push her, meant abandoning the one person who'd looked at him like he mattered. The elevator reached the lobby, and Ryan stood there while the doors opened and opened again, unable to make himself step out. His phone rang. Not Morrison this time. Sophie's school. Mr. Carter, this is Principal Howard. I'm afraid Sophie's not feeling well. Can you come pick her up? Ryan's world narrowed to that single point. I'll be right there. He texted Morrison that he'd be late, then took a cab to the school because it was faster than going back for his truck. Sophie was in the nurse's office, pale and miserable, holding her stomach. Hey, kiddo. Ryan crouched beside her chair. What's going on? My tummy hurts. Her voice was small and scared. The nurse looked apologetic. Probably just a bug that's going around. Bed rest and fluids should do it. Ryan scooped Sophie up. She was getting too big for this, but he didn't care, and carried her to the cab. She curled against his chest, small and warm, and trusting him completely to make everything okay. Back at the apartment, he got her into bed with her favorite bear and a glass of water. She fell asleep almost immediately while Ryan sat beside her, watching her breathe. This was what mattered. Not billionaire CEOs or background checks or $40 an hour. This small person who needed him. His phone buzzed. A text from Evelyn. Are you okay? Ryan stared at the message. He hadn't told her about Sophie being sick, hadn't told her anything. How did you know something was wrong? You left different. I called Patricia. She made some calls. You tracked me down again? I worry about people who matter to me. Is Sophie okay? Ryan sat back against Sophie's headboard, phone in hand, looking at those words. People who matter to me. When had that happened? When had he gone from being a stranger who pulled a wheelchair out of a puddle to someone Evelyn Sinclair worried about? She's okay. Just sick. Thanks for asking. The response came fast. Take tomorrow off. Friday too. She needs you. I need the money. I'll pay you anyway. Stay with your daughter. Ryan wanted to argue. Wanted to say he didn't need charity, but Sophie stirred in her sleep, making a small sound of discomfort, and every protest died in his throat. Thank you. Stop thanking me for basic human decency. Rest, both of you. Sophie was sick for 3 days. Ryan stayed home from both the therapy sessions and the job site, losing hours he couldn't afford, except that Evelyn kept her word and paid him anyway. He made soup from a can and read stories and kept Sophie hydrated. Mrs. Chen stopped by with medicine and ginger tea. Morrison texted that the job site was a disaster without him, but they'd manage. And Evelyn sent a delivery every day. Fresh fruit on Friday. A care package with Sophie's favorite crackers and juice boxes on Saturday. A new stuffed bear on Sunday that Sophie immediately named Mr. Whiskers and refused to let go of. Who keeps sending stuff? Sophie asked, finally feeling better, sitting up in bed with Mr. Whiskers tucked under her arm. A friend, Ryan said. You have rich friends? Apparently. Can I meet them? Ryan hesitated. His world and Evelyn's weren't supposed to overlap. That was the whole point. Keep it separate. Keep it professional. Don't let a 6-year-old get attached to someone who lived 40 floors above the rest of them. But Sophie was looking at him with those eyes that saw the best in everything. Maybe, Ryan heard himself say. Someday. On Monday, Ryan's phone rang. Patricia. Ms. Sinclair asked me to check in, she said in her professional voice. She'd like to know if you're available Tuesday morning. Tell her I'll be there. And the NDA? The board is still requesting. Tell the board I'll sign whatever they want, but I need to talk to Evelyn first. Tuesday morning, Ryan showed up at 5:30 like always. Evelyn was on the mat doing stretches, but she stood when he walked in. Sophie's better? She asked immediately. Yeah, thanks for the care packages. You didn't have to do that. I know. I wanted to. Evelyn studied his face. You look like you've made a decision. I'll sign the NDA, do the background check, whatever the board needs. Something eased in Evelyn's expression.
What changed your mind? Ryan thought about Sophie clutching Mr. Whiskers, about the groceries in the fridge and the bills getting paid, about how Evelyn had worried about them without being asked. You did, he said simply. They worked out in silence, but it was a different kind of silence than before. Something had shifted between them. Some wall that Ryan hadn't even realized was there had come down. After the session, while they were both cooling down, Evelyn spoke again. I want you to bring Sophie sometime. Ryan looked up sharply. What? You talk about her all the time. I'd like to meet her. That's not a good idea. Why not? Because this, Ryan gestured between them, at the apartment, at everything. This isn't real life. This is me helping you for a few hours a week. Sophie doesn't need to get confused about that. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Confused about what? That I'm your friend? We're not friends. The words came out harsher than Ryan intended. Evelyn went very still. Then what are we? She asked quietly. Ryan didn't have an answer. Didn't know how to explain that friendship required something like equality, and they would never be equal. That he was terrified Sophie would get attached to someone who lived in a different stratosphere. That he was scared he was already more attached than he should be. I should go, he said instead. Job site's waiting. He left without looking back, but he felt Evelyn's eyes on him all the way to the elevator. The background check came back clean. Ryan signed the NDA in Patricia's office, surrounded by lawyers who made him feel like a criminal, even though he'd done nothing wrong. After that, things should have gone back to normal. They didn't. Ryan and Evelyn still met Tuesday and Thursday mornings, still worked through the exercises, still drank terrible coffee and good coffee, and argued about the difference. But something was broken between them. Some honesty that had been there before was gone, replaced by careful politeness. Ryan hated it. He missed the version of Evelyn who threw resistance bands at him when he pushed too hard, who laughed at his construction-grade coffee, who looked at him like he was more than just hired help. 3 weeks after their fight, Ryan showed up to find Evelyn pacing the apartment. No workout clothes, no mat set up, just her in jeans and a sweater, gripping her cane like a weapon. We're not working out today, she said before he could speak. Okay, why not? Because I need to show you something. She led him to a room off the main living area that Ryan had never been in before. Inside was an office, desk, computer, walls covered with photos and articles. Evelyn's life in pictures, the company she'd built, the deals she'd closed, awards and recognition and proof that she'd been someone important before the accident tried to take it all away. This is what I lost, she said, staring at the wall. This is who I was. Ryan looked at the photos, at the confident woman in power suits closing billion-dollar deals, at the sharp-eyed CEO who looked like she could conquer anything. You didn't lose this, he said. You're still that person. Am I? Evelyn turned to face him. Because I don't feel like her. I feel like someone playing pretend, going through the motions, hoping nobody notices I'm barely holding it together. The raw honesty in her voice cracked something in Ryan's chest. You want to know what I see? He asked. What? I see someone who gets up at 5 a.m. to do physical therapy that hurts like hell. Someone who doesn't quit even when every instinct says to give up. Someone who sent care packages to a sick kid she'd never met because she gives a damn about people. Ryan stepped closer. You're not pretending. You're fighting. There's a difference. Evelyn's eyes were bright with unshed tears. You said we weren't friends. I lied. Why? Because being your friend scares the hell out of me, Ryan admitted. Because you're Evelyn Sinclair and I'm Ryan Carter, and those two people shouldn't exist in the same world. But here we are anyway, and I don't know what to do with that. Evelyn wiped her eyes roughly. You could start by bringing Sophie to meet me, like I asked. Ryan opened his mouth to refuse, to say all the logical reasons why that was a terrible idea. But looking at Evelyn standing there in her office full of ghosts, looking more real and vulnerable than any magazine photo, he couldn't make the words come out. Okay, he said instead. Okay. Saturday afternoon. If she wants to come. Evelyn's smile was bright enough to light up the whole room. Saturday afternoon, Ryan held Sophie's hand as they rode the elevator to the 40th floor. His daughter was wearing her favorite dress and wouldn't stop asking questions. Is she really a billionaire? Yes. Does she live in a castle? Sort of. Can I touch her cane? Absolutely not.
The elevator doors opened. Evelyn was waiting in the hallway, wearing casual clothes, her cane in hand, looking more nervous than Ryan had ever seen her. Sophie took one look at her and said, "You're really pretty." Evelyn laughed, surprised and genuine. "Thank you. You must be Sophie." "Did you really send Mr. Whiskers?" "I did. Do you like him?" "He's my best friend now, except for Daddy. Daddy's still my best friend." Evelyn's eyes met Ryan's over Sophie's head. "Lucky Daddy." They spent the afternoon in Evelyn's apartment. Sophie was fearless, asking 1,000 questions about everything. Evelyn answered each one with patience Ryan didn't know she had. At some point, Sophie ended up showing Evelyn how to play some complicated game with blocks that Ryan couldn't follow. He watched from the couch, drinking good coffee, listening to his daughter's laughter echo through a space that had probably never heard a child before. And he realized he was in serious trouble, because this, whatever this was becoming, felt an awful lot like something he couldn't afford to lose. The Saturday visits became a thing neither Ryan nor Evelyn had planned, but both of them needed. Sophie would spend the afternoon in Evelyn's apartment, playing games, asking impossible questions, and treating the billionaire CEO like she was just another adult who happened to live in a really tall building. Evelyn, for her part, seemed to transform around Sophie, less guarded, more willing to laugh, acting like someone who'd forgotten what it felt like to just exist without the weight of a company on her shoulders. Ryan watched it happen with a mixture of warmth and growing dread, because Sophie was getting attached, and so was Evelyn, and Ryan knew from brutal experience that attachment meant vulnerability, and vulnerability meant someone eventually got hurt. "She's good with kids," Morrison said one Monday at the job site, after Ryan had mentioned the visits in passing. "Surprising for someone like her." "Someone like her?" Morrison shrugged, adjusting his hard hat. "Rich, powerful. Those types don't usually have time for regular people." Ryan didn't argue, but the words sat wrong in his chest. Evelyn wasn't a type. She was just a person who'd had different luck than the rest of them. The fourth Saturday, Ryan arrived to find Evelyn in the kitchen attempting to make pancakes. Emphasis on attempting. The kitchen looked like a flour bomb had detonated. "What are you doing?" Ryan asked, setting his bag down. "Making breakfast." Evelyn flipped something in the pan that was definitely not pancake-shaped. "Sophie mentioned she liked pancakes, so you decided to learn how to make them." "I watched a video. It looked simple." Ryan walked over and looked at the disaster in the pan. "That's not a pancake. That's a crime scene." "It's harder than it looks." "Step aside." Evelyn moved and Ryan took over the stove. He'd been making pancakes for Sophie since she was old enough to eat solid food. His hands moved on autopilot, mixing batter, heating the pan to the right temperature, pouring perfect circles that actually looked like what they were supposed to be. "Where did you learn to cook?" Evelyn asked, watching from the counter. "Necessity. Sophie needed to eat. YouTube had tutorials." Ryan flipped a pancake. "Not exactly culinary school." "It's better than culinary school. It's real." When Sophie arrived with Mrs. Chen, who'd started accompanying them on these visits, enjoying the change of scenery, there was a full stack of pancakes waiting. Sophie's eyes went wide. "You made these for me?" "Well," Evelyn said, "your dad made them. I mostly made a mess." Sophie giggled and climbed into a chair at the dining table that probably cost more than Ryan's truck. Mrs. Chen settled in beside her, looking around the apartment with the practiced eye of someone evaluating whether rich people were really any happier than the rest of them. They ate together, this strange assembled family that shouldn't work but somehow did. Sophie chattered between bites about school and her friend Emma's new puppy and how she'd gotten a gold star on her spelling test. Evelyn listened like every word mattered. Mrs. Chen interjected with stories about her grandchildren in Taiwan. Ryan just ate his pancakes and tried not to think about how normal this felt. After breakfast, Sophie wanted to show Evelyn the story she'd written about a dragon who was afraid of heights. They settled on the couch while Sophie read aloud, her finger tracing each word. Evelyn listened with complete attention, asking questions at all the right moments. Ryan and Mrs. Chen cleaned up the kitchen. "She's good for you," Mrs. Chen said quietly, scrubbing a pan. "Sophie?" "Yeah, she's my whole world." "Not Sophie. Her." Mrs. Chen nodded toward the living room. "The fancy lady." Ryan's hand stilled in the soapy water. "It's not like that." "No? Then what's it like?" She needed help. I'm helping her, that's all. Mrs. Chen made a sound that clearly communicated what she thought of that explanation. You're a terrible liar, Ryan Carter. Before Ryan could respond, Sophie called out, Daddy, Miss Evelyn wants to hear the story about the knight who didn't fight dragons. Ryan dried his hands and joined them in the living room. Sophie was already climbing into his lap, getting comfortable for story time. Evelyn was watching with an expression Ryan couldn't quite read. The knight who didn't fight dragons? She asked. It's Daddy's story. He makes it up. I'd like to hear it. So Ryan told the story, the same one he'd been building for Sophie since she was small, about the knight who helped people instead of seeking glory, who fixed things instead of breaking them, who believed showing up every day was braver than slaying any dragon. When he finished, Sophie was drowsy against his chest. Evelyn was looking at him with those sharp eyes that saw too much. That's a good story, she said quietly. It's just something I tell her. It's more than that. Evelyn's voice was soft. It's who you are? Mrs. Chen cleared her throat pointedly from the kitchen. I think someone needs a nap. Sophie protested, but her yawns gave her away. Ryan carried her to one of Evelyn's guest rooms, because apparently the apartment had multiple bedrooms that never got used. He tucked her in with Mr. Whiskers and closed the door halfway. When he came back out, Mrs. Chen had settled herself in the living room with a book she'd brought. You two go talk. I'll keep an ear out for the little one. We don't need to... Go, Mrs. Chen said, not looking up from her book. Talk. Evelyn was already standing by the windows, her cane in hand, staring out at the city. Ryan joined her, keeping a careful distance between them. I got cleared yesterday, Evelyn said without preamble. Cleared for what? To walk unassisted. The doctors say I don't need the cane anymore. She held it up, examining it like a foreign object. 4 months and I'm finally getting my life back. That's great. Is it? Ryan looked at her. You've been working toward this since the day I met you. Of course it's great. Then why does it feel like I'm losing something? Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. The therapists are talking about ending my sessions, getting me back to the office full time, back to board meetings and shareholder calls in 12-hour days, back to being Evelyn Sinclair, CEO, instead of just Evelyn. You're still you. The cane doesn't define that. No, but this does. She gestured at the space between them. These mornings, the pancakes, Sophie reading me stories. When did this become the part of my life that feels real? Ryan's chest tightened. Evelyn, I know what you're going to say. That our worlds are different. That this was always temporary. That I need to go back to my real life and you need to go back to yours. She turned to face him fully. But what if I don't want to? It's not about what you want. Why not? I've spent my entire adult life building a company, making money, proving I could be successful. And you know what? I did it. I won. And I was miserable. Her eyes were bright with frustrated tears. Then I had an accident and lost everything I thought mattered. And somehow, sitting on the floor with your daughter playing blocks, I'm happier than I've been in 10 years. Explain that to me. Ryan couldn't. Didn't know how to put into words that happiness didn't care about logic or bank accounts or which world you were supposed to belong to. What do you want me to say? He asked finally. I want you to tell me I'm not crazy, that these past few months have meant something to you too. Of course they have. The admission felt like jumping off a cliff. But that doesn't change reality. I'm a construction worker with a 6-year-old daughter and bills I can barely pay. You're a billionaire CEO with a company to run and a life I can't even imagine. We can be friends, but we can't be... Can't be what? Ryan looked at her standing there, no longer needing the cane but still holding it like a security blanket, and he couldn't finish the sentence. Because finishing it meant admitting what he'd been trying to ignore for weeks, that somewhere between the early morning workouts and the terrible coffee, and the moments when Evelyn looked at him like he was the only person in the world who understood her, he'd started feeling things he had no business feeling. We can't complicate this, he said instead. Sophie's already attached to you. If this ends badly, why does it have to end badly? Because things always end badly when people from different worlds try to... Ryan stopped, frustrated. You know what? Forget it. I should check on Sophie. He started to walk away, but Evelyn's voice stopped him. I'm hosting a charity gala next month. Ryan turned back. Okay? It's for children's education. Big event, lots of press, all the important people in Seattle. Evelyn was gripping her cane tight enough that her knuckles were white. I want you to come. No. Ryan, absolutely not. That's your world, not mine. Maybe I want you in my world. Why? So your rich friends can stare at the construction worker you've been slumming with? Ryan's voice came out harsher than he intended. So they can whisper about what the hell Evelyn Sinclair is doing with someone like me. Evelyn flinched like he'd slapped her. Is that really what you think? That you're some charity case I picked up? I think I'm someone who doesn't belong at a charity gala, and we both know it. You belong anywhere I say you belong. That's not how the world works, and you know it. They stared at each other, both breathing hard, the air between them crackling with everything they weren't saying. Mrs. Chen's voice drifted from the living room. You two done yelling because you're going to wake the baby. Ryan closed his eyes and counted to 10. When he opened them, Evelyn was still watching him with that expression that made his chest ache. I should go, he said quietly. The gala is on the 15th, 6 p.m. I'll have a suit sent to your apartment. I'm not going. I'll send it anyway. Ryan wanted to argue more, but he was suddenly exhausted. Sophie needs to get home. He collected his daughter, who woke up confused and rubbing her eyes, and Mrs. Chen. They rode the elevator down in silence. In the lobby, Sophie leaned against his shoulder and asked, Are you mad at Miss Evelyn? No, kiddo. You sounded mad. Sometimes adults disagree about things. It doesn't mean we're mad. Sophie considered this. Emma's parents disagree a lot. Then they got divorced. Ryan's heart clenched. Miss Evelyn and I aren't married, Soph. We're just friends. Then why were you yelling? Because sometimes friends yell too. Mrs. Chen patted his arm sympathetically as they climbed into a cab. She didn't say anything, but her look clearly communicated that he was an idiot. Ryan was starting to agree with her. The suit arrived on Monday. Ryan stared at the box like it might contain a bomb. Inside was a tuxedo that probably cost more than 3 months of his rent. The note was simple. You'd look good in this. Ryan shoved it in the back of his closet and tried to forget about it. Tuesday morning, he showed up for their session like nothing had happened. Evelyn was already on the mat, stretching. No cane in sight. You're walking, Ryan said. I'm walking. She stood smoothly, no wobble, no hesitation. Want to see? She crossed the room and back, her gait almost completely normal. Only someone looking closely would notice the slight favoring of her left side. That's incredible, Ryan said, and meant it. I couldn't have done it without you. You could have. You just needed someone to stop babying you. Evelyn smiled slightly. Still, thank you. They worked out, falling back into their rhythm. But something was different. Every time their hands brushed passing equipment, Ryan felt it like an electric shock. Every time Evelyn laughed at one of his sarcastic comments, he wanted to find ways to make her laugh again. This was dangerous territory, and he knew it. After the session, while they were both cooling down, Evelyn spoke casually. Did you get the suit? Yeah. And? It's very nice. I'm sure someone will appreciate it. Ryan, I'm not going to the gala, Evelyn. Why not? Because I don't belong there. Stop saying that. Her voice sharpened. You belong anywhere you choose to be. That's easy to say when you're the one at the top. Evelyn set down her water bottle carefully. You think being at the top is easy? You think I don't see how people look at me? How they're waiting for me to fail, to prove that a woman can't really run a company this size? That's different. How? How is it different? Because at the end of the day, you're still rich and powerful, and I'm still barely keeping my head above water. Ryan stood up. I need to go. We're not done talking about this. Yeah, we are. He left before Evelyn could respond. In the elevator, he leaned against the wall and tried to figure out when his life had gotten so complicated. His phone buzzed. Morrison. Carter, we got a problem, big one. Ryan's stomach dropped. What kind of problem? Inspection found structural issues on the Ballard project. They're shutting us down until we fix it. How long? 2 weeks minimum, maybe more. Morrison's voice was grim. Which means no work, no pay. Ryan closed his eyes. You're kidding. Wish I was. I'm trying to find other projects to move people to, but it's tight. Might be able to get you on the Madison Street job, but it doesn't start until next month. A month without work. A month without his primary income. Ryan did the math in his head and came up with a number that made him nauseous. Yeah, okay, let me know what you can do. After Morrison hung up, Ryan stood in the lobby of Evelyn's building and stared at his phone. The money from the therapy sessions would help, but it wouldn't cover everything. And if Evelyn didn't need him anymore now that she could walk, he was screwed. That night, Sophie noticed he was quieter than usual. "What's wrong, Daddy?" "Nothing, kiddo. Just tired." "You're always tired." Yeah, he was. Ryan's phone buzzed again. "Evelyn, I heard about the Ballard project. Are you okay?" He stared at the message. Of course she'd heard. Patricia probably had connections everywhere. "I'm fine." Liar. "Come to the apartment tomorrow. We need to talk. I'll be there Tuesday like always." "Tomorrow, Ryan, please." He showed up Wednesday afternoon after dropping Sophie at school. Evelyn was waiting in the living room, pacing even though she didn't need to anymore. "Patricia made some calls," she said as soon as he walked in. "I can get you on 3 different projects. Better pay than Morrison's crew. You'd start Monday." Ryan felt something cold settle in his chest. "No." "Why not?" "Because I don't need you fixing my life." "It's not fixing, it's helping." "It's the same thing." Ryan's voice was tight. "I don't need charity, Evelyn. It's not charity. It's using my resources to help someone I care about." "Yeah? And what happens when your board finds out you're getting special treatment for your construction worker friend? What happens when it ends up in the press?" Evelyn's jaw tightened. "I don't care what they think." "Well, I do. Because the second people start thinking I'm only getting jobs because I know you, my reputation is done. Everything I've built on my own gets erased." "You're being stubborn." "I'm being realistic." Ryan ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "You live in a world where making a phone call fixes problems. I live in a world where phone calls cost money I don't have. Those aren't the same thing." "Then let me help you until you find something else." "You are helping me. The therapy sessions, which I don't need anymore." Evelyn's voice went quiet. "The doctors cleared me, Ryan. I'm walking. I'm going back to the office full-time next week. The board wants to phase out the home sessions." There it was. The thing Ryan had known was coming but hadn't wanted to face. "So we're done," he said. "We don't have to be." "Yeah, we do. You've got your life back. I've got mine. That was always the deal." "The deal changed." Evelyn stepped closer. "At least it did for me." Ryan wanted to step back but made himself stay still. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I don't want to stop seeing you. I don't want to stop having Sophie over on Saturdays. I don't want to go back to my life before you showed up in it." Her eyes were bright. "I'm saying that somewhere in the last few months, you became the best part of my week, and I'm not ready to give that up." "Evelyn, come to the gala with me." "I already told you, Sets." "I know what you told me. I'm asking anyway." She took a breath. "I'm going to walk into that event without my cane for the first time since the accident. Every reporter, every board member, every person who's been waiting for me to fail is going to be watching, and I want you there." "Why?" "Because you're the one who made me believe I could do it." Evelyn's voice cracked slightly. "Because when I look at you, I remember who I am underneath all the bullshit. Because I trust you." Ryan felt something breaking apart in his chest. All the logical reasons he should say no were still there. But looking at Evelyn standing in front of him, vulnerable and honest, and asking him to be there for the moment that mattered most to her, he couldn't make himself refuse. "One condition," he said finally. "Anything. After the gala, we figure out what this actually is. No more pretending we're just friends when we both know it's more than that." Evelyn's breath caught. "Okay? Okay?" "Yeah." She smiled, tentative and real. "Okay." Ryan left the apartment feeling like he'd just made either the best or worst decision of his life. He was still trying to figure out which when he got home and found Sophie and Mrs. Chen making cookies in the kitchen. "You look different," Mrs. Chen observed. "Different how?" "Less stupid." Sophie giggled through a mouthful of cookie dough. Ryan wanted to argue, but he was pretty sure Mrs. Chen was right. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur. Ryan picked up odd jobs through contacts Morrison had. Nothing permanent, but enough to keep the lights on. The therapy sessions with Evelyn officially ended, but she still asked him to come by on Thursday mornings. "Just to make sure I'm not backsliding," she said. They both knew that was an excuse, but neither of them cared. Sophie still came over on Saturdays. Evelyn taught her how to play chess and was genuinely impressed when the 6-year-old beat her on the third try. Ryan made pancakes and pretended not to notice the way Evelyn watched him move around her kitchen like he belonged there. Mrs. Chen observed all of this with knowing looks but kept her thoughts to herself. The suit fit perfectly. Ryan stared at himself in the mirror the night of the gala and barely recognized the person looking back. He looked like someone who belonged at fancy events, someone whose life wasn't held together with duct tape and determination. The illusion was kind of terrifying. Sophie was staying with Mrs. Chen for the night. She made Ryan kneel down so she could straighten his bow tie, something Evelyn had taught her during one of their Saturday visits. "You look like a prince," Sophie declared. "I look like I'm wearing someone else's clothes." "No, you look like you." She kissed his cheek. "Tell Miss Evelyn she looks pretty." "I will. And don't step on her toes when you dance." Ryan blinked. "Who said anything about dancing?" Sophie just giggled. Mrs. Chen smiled knowingly from the couch. The car that picked Ryan up was even fancier than the usual Mercedes. The driver gave him an approving nod. "Looking sharp, Mr. Carter." "Thanks, I think." They drove to the venue, a historic hotel downtown that Ryan had walked past 100 times but never imagined entering. Red carpet outside, photographers everywhere, people in evening gowns and tuxedos streaming through the entrance. Ryan's hands were sweating. The driver pulled up to the entrance. "Miss Sinclair asked that you meet her inside, the main ballroom." Ryan climbed out, feeling every eye turn toward him. He wasn't famous, wasn't important, but he was arriving alone at an event like this, which apparently was enough to draw attention. He made it through the lobby without tripping over his own feet. The ballroom was already filling with Seattle's elite, tech moguls, old money families, politicians, and people whose faces Ryan recognized from billboards and magazine covers. And then he saw Evelyn. She was standing near the far windows, talking to a group of older men in expensive suits. She wore a dark blue gown that somehow managed to be both elegant and simple. Her hair was down, falling in waves past her shoulders, and she was standing completely on her own, no cane, no support, looking every inch the powerful CEO the world expected her to be. But when she saw Ryan, her entire face transformed. The professional mask dropped away, and she smiled, really smiled, and Ryan forgot about everyone else in the room. She excused herself from the conversation and crossed the ballroom toward him. Several heads turned to watch. Ryan could practically hear the whispers starting. "You came," Evelyn said when she reached him. "I said I would. You look—" She seemed to search for words. "You clean up nice, Carter. Sophie said to tell you that you look pretty." "Just Sophie?" Ryan's mouth went dry. "No, not just Sophie." Evelyn's smile widened. She linked her arm through his like it was the most natural thing in the world. "Come on, let me introduce you to some people who are going to be insufferably curious about who you are." "Great, that's exactly what I wanted." But he let her lead him into the crowd because apparently he'd lost his mind completely. The next hour was a blur of names and handshakes and polite conversation that Ryan had no reference for. Evelyn stayed beside him the entire time, her hand on his arm, introducing him simply as "my friend Ryan," without any other explanation. Some people were polite. Others looked at him like they were trying to solve a puzzle. A few wealthy women gave him appraising looks that made him deeply uncomfortable. "You're doing great," Evelyn murmured during a break in conversations. "I'm completely lost." "Good. That means you're being yourself." A distinguished older man approached, silver hair, expensive suit, the kind of confidence that came from generations of money. "Evelyn, good to see you on your feet." "Richard, good to be on my feet." Evelyn's voice was pleasant, but Ryan could hear the steel underneath. "This is Ryan Carter. Ryan, Richard Thornton, chairman of the board." Ryan shook his hand, meeting the older man's evaluating gaze steadily. "Mr. Thornton." "Carter, Evelyn's mentioned you." Richard's smile didn't reach his eyes. "The physical therapist, correct?" "Among other things." "He's being modest," Evelyn interjected. "Ryan's the reason I'm standing here tonight." "How fortunate." Richard's tone suggested he found it anything but.
Evelyn, when you have a moment, the board would like a word, privately. Of course, I'll find you after dinner. After Richard walked away, Ryan leaned close to Evelyn. He doesn't like me. Richard doesn't like anyone. Don't take it personally. Pretty sure he likes me specifically less than he likes most people. Evelyn laughed. Probably. But I don't care what Richard thinks. You should. He's chairman of your board. And I'm CEO of my company. He works for me, not the other way around. Before Ryan could respond, a bell chimed. People began moving toward their tables. Evelyn led Ryan to a table near the front where several of her executives were already seated. They greeted Evelyn warmly and Ryan with polite curiosity. Dinner was multiple courses of food Ryan couldn't identify. He watched which fork everyone else used and tried not to feel completely out of his depth. Evelyn sat beside him, occasionally touching his hand under the table like she was making sure he was still real. After dinner, there were speeches, a presentation about the charity, a video that made several women dab at their eyes with napkins. Then Evelyn was called to the stage. Ryan watched her walk up there, steady and strong, and felt something fierce bloom in his chest. This was the woman who'd been stuck in a wheelchair 4 months ago, who'd fought through brutal therapy sessions and never quit even when everything hurt, who'd trusted him enough to push her past her limits. She gave a short speech about the importance of education and opportunity, about believing people could overcome their circumstances if given the right support. Her eyes found Ryan's in the crowd and held for just a moment. The applause was thunderous. Evelyn walked off the stage without a single stumble. And then the music started and people moved to the dance floor. Ryan was considering whether he could slip out unnoticed when Evelyn appeared beside him. "Dance with me," she said. "I don't know how to dance." "Neither do I. We'll figure it out." She took his hand and led him onto the floor. Ryan was acutely aware of every eye on them as Evelyn stepped into his arms. He put one hand on her waist, took her other hand in his, and tried to remember how dancing was supposed to work. "Just move," Evelyn said softly. "Don't think about it." So he did. They swayed to the music, not quite in time, not quite graceful. Evelyn's hand was warm in his. She was close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her eyes. "Everyone's staring," Ryan murmured. "Let them. They're wondering what the hell you're doing with me." "I'm wondering that too sometimes." Evelyn smiled. "Then I remember I don't actually care." "You should care. Your reputation is mine to manage." She squeezed his hand. "Stop worrying about what other people think." "That's easy for you to say." "No, it's not. It's terrifying. But you make me brave enough to do it anyway." Ryan didn't know what to say to that, so he just held her closer and let the music carry them. When the song ended, they stayed on the floor for another. And another. People stopped staring eventually, moving on to their own conversations and dances. Ryan stopped counting the eyes on them and focused on the woman in his arms. "Thank you for being here," Evelyn said during the fourth song. "You're welcome." "I mean it. This night was important to me. Having you here made it better. Even though I'm terrible at dancing, especially because you're terrible at dancing." She rested her head against his shoulder. "You're real, Ryan. In a room full of people playing parts, you're the only real thing." Ryan's throat tightened. "Evelyn, I know we said we'd talk after, about what this is, but I need you to know something first." "What?" She pulled back slightly to meet his eyes. "I'm falling for you, have been for weeks. Maybe since that first day in the rain, and I know that's complicated and probably stupid given our different worlds, but I needed to say it out loud." Ryan's heart was pounding so hard he was sure everyone could hear it. "That is stupid." Evelyn's face fell slightly. "It's stupid," Ryan continued, "because I fell for you the first time you threw a resistance band at my head and told me to go to hell." Her laugh was bright and surprised. "Really? Really? And you're right, it is complicated, but I'm tired of pretending it's not happening. So what do we do?" Ryan looked around the ballroom at the wealth and power and world that Evelyn belonged to. Then he looked at her standing in his arms, looking at him like he was the only person who mattered. "I guess we figure it out together," he said. Evelyn smiled and kissed him. It wasn't dramatic or earth-shattering. It was soft and sweet and real. And in that moment, with cameras probably capturing every second, and the board chairman glaring from across the room, and 100 complications waiting to crash down on them, Ryan didn't care about any of it.
He just kissed her back and let himself believe that maybe, impossibly, this could actually work. When they finally pulled apart, Evelyn was crying and smiling at the same time.
"Well," she said, "I guess the whole room knows now. Is that a problem?" "Probably, but it's too late to care." She took his hand. "Want to get out of here?" "Absolutely." They slipped out a side exit, leaving the gala behind. Outside, Seattle was cool and clear, stars actually visible for once. Evelyn kicked off her heels and carried them, walking barefoot down the sidewalk beside Ryan. "Where are we going?" Ryan asked. "I don't know. Anywhere."
So they walked hand in hand through the quiet city streets. Two people from different worlds who'd found each other in the rain and somehow decided the impossibility of it all didn't matter as much as the reality of being together. Ryan's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen with a photo of Sophie asleep on her couch, Mr. Whiskers tucked under her arm. She wanted to wait up to hear how it went. "Fell asleep asking if you remembered to dance." "Did you?" Ryan showed the photo to Evelyn. She smiled, touching the screen gently. "You have to tell her," Evelyn said quietly. "Tell her what?" "About us. If this is real, she deserves to know." Ryan thought about Sophie's question weeks ago about why he and Evelyn had been yelling, about her saying Emma's parents disagreed a lot before they got divorced, about how 6-year-olds saw more than adults gave them credit for. "Yeah," he agreed. "She does." They kept walking, neither of them wanting the night to end, both of them knowing that tomorrow would bring all the complications they were currently ignoring. But for tonight, it was enough to just be two people holding hands under the Seattle stars, believing that love could bridge any distance if you were brave enough to try. The photos hit the internet before Ryan even made it home that night. He was still walking Evelyn back to her building, still caught up in the impossible lightness of being with her, when his phone started buzzing. Not just one message, a flood of them. "Morrison, dude, is that you?" A number he didn't recognize. Ryan Carter dating Evelyn Sinclair? No way. Another unknown. Construction worker lands billionaire CEO. Living the dream, bro. Ryan stopped walking. "What the hell?" Evelyn pulled out her own phone and her face went pale. "Oh no." Someone had captured the moment they kissed on the dance floor. The photo was everywhere. Gossip sites, social media, business news outlets that were already speculating about what this meant for Sinclair Technologies. The headlines ranged from curious to cruel. Billionaire CEO's mystery man. Who is Ryan Carter? Evelyn Sinclair goes public with blue-collar boyfriend. From wheelchair to romance, Sinclair's remarkable recovery. Ryan felt his stomach drop. This is bad. It's not that bad. Evelyn, look at these comments. He scrolled through his phone, reading aloud. Gold digger. Opportunist. Wonder how much she's paying him. This one says I'm probably just after her money. Those are just internet trolls. They don't matter. They matter to me. Ryan's voice was tight. This is exactly what I was afraid of. Now everyone thinks I'm using you. I know you're not, but they don't. And now Sophie's going to see this. And Mrs. Chen. And everyone at the job site. Ryan ran his hand through his hair, the tuxedo suddenly feeling like a costume he had no business wearing. This is going to follow me everywhere. Evelyn grabbed his hand. Hey, look at me. Ryan met her eyes. I don't care what they say, Evelyn said firmly. I know who you are. That's what matters. You live in a world where reputation is everything. This affects you too. Let it. Her grip tightened. I'm not hiding this. I'm not hiding you. Ryan wanted to believe her, wanted to think that love was enough to overcome the tsunami of judgment already crashing down on them. But he'd lived long enough to know that wanting something didn't make it true. His phone rang. Mrs. Chen. You need to come home, she said without preamble. Now. What's wrong? Is Sophie? Sophie's fine. She's asleep. But there are people outside your building. Reporters, I think. They're asking neighbors about you. Ryan's blood went cold. I'm on my way. He looked at Evelyn. There are reporters at my apartment. Then come stay at mine tonight. You and Sophie both. That'll just make it worse. Ryan, I need to go. He was already backing away, panic replacing the warmth from moments ago. I need to get Sophie somewhere safe. Let me help. I can send security at... No more help. That's what got us into this mess. Ryan knew he was being unfair, but he couldn't stop.
I'll call you tomorrow. He left her standing on the sidewalk and ran toward his truck, which was parked 6 blocks away because there was no way he was paying downtown parking rates. Behind him, he heard Evelyn calling his name, but he didn't turn around.
The drive home took 20 minutes that felt like hours. Ryan's mind was racing through worst-case scenarios. Sophie's face plastered online, reporters at her school, people digging through his past, finding every mistake, every unpaid bill, every moment he'd barely held things together. When he pulled up to his building, 3 people with cameras were loitering on the sidewalk. They spotted his truck immediately. Ryan ducked his head and shouldered through them. "Mr. Carter, how long have you been seeing Miss Sinclair? Is it true you met during her physical therapy? What do you say to people who think you're taking advantage of her?" He didn't answer, just keyed into the building and took the stairs 2 at a time to the 3rd floor. Mrs. Chen had the door open before he could knock. "They've been here for an hour," she said quietly, knocking on doors, asking questions. "Mrs. Patterson from 2B told them you were a good father. Mr. Kim told them to get lost." Ryan stepped inside and locked the door behind him. Sophie was asleep on the couch, Mr. Whiskers tucked under her chin. She looked peaceful, innocent, like the world wasn't about to crash down on them. "I'm sorry," Ryan said to Mrs. Chen. "You shouldn't have had to deal with this. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to yourself for running away from that woman." "I didn't run away. You ran. I saw it in your face when you walked in here." Mrs. Chen picked up her purse. "She cares about you. You care about her. The rest is just noise." "The noise affects Sophie. Sophie is tougher than you think. Kids always are." She patted his arm. "Don't let fear make you stupid, Ryan Carter." After she left, Ryan sat beside Sophie on the couch and tried to figure out what the hell he was supposed to do now. His phone was still exploding with messages. He turned it off and just sat there in the quiet, listening to his daughter breathe. She woke up around 3 a.m., groggy and confused. "Daddy?" "Hey, kiddo, sorry, didn't mean to wake you." "How was the dance?" Ryan thought about the ballroom and the kiss and the moment when everything had felt perfect. "It was good." "Did Miss Evelyn look pretty?" "The prettiest." Sophie smiled sleepily. "Did you tell her I said so?" "I did." "Good." She snuggled back into the couch. "I like Miss Evelyn. She's nice." Ryan's chest ached. "Yeah, she is." "Are you going to marry her?" The question hit Ryan like a punch. "What?" "No. Sophie, we're just—" Emma said when grown-ups kiss, they get married. "Did you kiss Miss Evelyn?" Ryan closed his eyes. Of course, Sophie had seen the photos. Kids at school would have shown her on their parents' phones. She'd probably been seeing the pictures all evening. "Yeah," he admitted. "I did." "So you're getting married?" "It doesn't work like that, Soph." "Why not?" "Because the world was more complicated than a 6-year-old understood. Because billionaire CEOs didn't marry construction workers with nothing to offer but calloused hands and a 3rd-floor walk-up. Because every logical part of Ryan's brain was screaming that this was a disaster waiting to happen. "We'll talk about it in the morning," Ryan said instead. "Go back to sleep." Sophie did. Easy as that. Kids could sleep through anything when they felt safe. Ryan wished he still had that ability. Morning came too soon. Ryan woke on the couch with Sophie sprawled across his chest, drool soaking through his wrinkled dress shirt. The reporters were still outside. He could hear them through the window, talking to each other, waiting. Sophie woke up and immediately wanted to look out the window. Ryan stopped her. "New rule. We don't go near the windows today." "Why not?" "Because there are people outside who want to take our picture." Sophie's eyes went wide. "Like movie stars?" "Sort of, but not the fun kind." He made breakfast, cereal because he was too tired for anything else, and tried to figure out logistics. Sophie couldn't go to school. The reporters would follow her. Mrs. Chen couldn't come get her without running the same gauntlet. Ryan's phone, which he'd reluctantly turned back on, showed 47 missed calls. Most from numbers he didn't recognize. 3 from Morrison, 5 from Evelyn. He called Morrison first. "Jesus Christ, Carter, you're all over the news." "I know." "Evelyn Sinclair, seriously? How the hell did that happen?" "Long story. The guys are losing their minds. Half of them think you won the lottery. The other half think you've lost your mind." Morrison paused. "I'm in the second group, for what it's worth."
Thanks for the vote of confidence. I'm serious. You know what happens to regular guys who date women like that? They get chewed up and spit out. Don't care how nice she seems. She is nice. Maybe, but her world isn't. Watch your back. After Morrison hung up, Ryan sat at the kitchen table staring at Evelyn's missed calls. He should call her back. Should apologize for running. Should do something other than hide in his apartment like a coward. Before he could decide, someone knocked on the door. Ryan checked the peephole. A woman in an expensive suit stood outside. Not a reporter, but not anyone he recognized either. Mr. Carter, my name is Jennifer Wu. I'm an attorney with Sinclair Technologies. May I come in? Ryan's stomach dropped. He opened the door but didn't invite her inside. What do you want? Jennifer didn't seem bothered by his hostility. Ms. Sinclair asked me to deliver something to you. She handed him a manila envelope. And to make sure you and your daughter are safe. The reporters outside are violating harassment laws. I can have them removed if you'd like. Why would Evelyn send a lawyer? Because you won't answer her calls and she's worried about you. Jennifer's expression softened slightly. She also wanted me to tell you that this is not her trying to fix your life. It's her trying to protect someone she cares about. There's a difference. Ryan opened the envelope. Inside was a key card and a note in Evelyn's handwriting. Safe house in Bellevue. Fully stocked. No one knows about it except Patricia and now you. Take Sophie somewhere the reporters can't find you. Please. E. I don't need this, Ryan said, trying to hand it back. Whether you need it or not, it's yours, along with this. Jennifer handed him another envelope, thicker this time. Restraining order against the press. If any of them come within 50 feet of you or Sophie, they'll be arrested. How did she... Miss Sinclair has very good lawyers. Jennifer smiled slightly. And for what it's worth, I've worked with her for 6 years. I've never seen her like this about anyone. Whatever you two have, it's real. She left before Ryan could respond. He stood in the doorway holding the envelopes and feeling like his life was spiraling completely out of his control. Behind him, Sophie called out, Daddy? Who was that? Just someone helping us. Was it from Miss Evelyn? Ryan looked at the keycard in his hand, at the note with its careful handwriting, at the restraining order that had probably cost more than he made in a month. Yeah, he said quietly. It was. They packed a bag and left through the back entrance, avoiding the reporters. Ryan drove to the address Evelyn had written, a condo in Bellevue with a view of Lake Washington and furniture that looked like it had never been sat on. Sophie explored every room with wide eyes. This is like a castle. It's just a place to stay for a few days. Can we live here forever? No, kiddo, we have our own home. But looking around the pristine condo with its full fridge and comfortable beds and complete absence of broken appliances, Ryan felt the familiar ache of inadequacy. This was what Evelyn's world looked like. Clean, easy, fixed before problems even appeared. His world was duct tape and hoping the truck would start, and choosing which bill to pay late. They weren't compatible, no matter how much he wanted them to be. Sophie was watching TV, cartoons that Ryan had never been able to afford the premium cable package for, when his phone rang. Evelyn. This time, he answered. Are you okay? She asked immediately. We're fine. At the place you sent, thank you. You don't have to thank me. Yeah, I do. The lawyer, the restraining order, this condo, all of it costs money I don't have. I don't want your money, Ryan. I know, but that's part of the problem. He walked into the kitchen where Sophie couldn't hear. Everything you do to help just reminds me how different our lives are. Our lives don't have to be different. Yes, they do. You live in penthouses and send lawyers to fix problems. I live in a third-floor walk-up and fix problems with duct tape. Ryan's voice cracked slightly. Last night was a mistake. The silence on the other end was deafening. You don't mean that, Evelyn finally said. I mean that I can't do this. Can't have reporters following Sophie, can't have people thinking I'm using you, can't pretend that our worlds fit together when they clearly don't. So that's it? One bad day and you're giving up? I'm being realistic. No, you're being a coward. Evelyn's voice had gone cold. You're running because things got hard. Things were always going to get hard. I just didn't want to admit it. So what are you saying? Ryan closed his eyes. I'm saying we should stop before this gets worse.
before Sophie gets more attached, before we both get hurt. I'm already hurt, you idiot. I'm already attached. So is Sophie. Evelyn's voice broke. And you don't get to decide this alone. Someone has to. Why? Because you're scared? Because your pride won't let me help you? Because I can't be what you need. Ryan was gripping the phone so hard his hand hurt. You need someone from your world, someone who fits. I'm just a guy who pulled your wheelchair out of a puddle. You're the guy I fell in love with. The words hung in the air. Ryan felt something crack in his chest. Don't, he said quietly. Don't say that. Why not? It's true. It doesn't matter if it's true. It matters if it's sustainable, and this isn't. You're wrong. Then prove it. Tell me how this works. Tell me how we build a life together when everything about us is incompatible. I don't know yet, but we figure it out together. That's what people who love each other do. Ryan leaned against the counter, exhausted. I can't think about this right now. I need to focus on Sophie. Fine, focus on Sophie, but don't use her as an excuse to push me away. I'm not. Yes, you are. You're terrified that if you let me in completely, if you let Sophie get more attached, we'll eventually leave and you'll be alone again, like when Sarah died. Evelyn's voice softened. But I'm not Sarah. I'm not dying. I'm just here, trying to love you, and you won't let me. Ryan felt tears burning his eyes. You don't understand. Then help me understand. I can't give you what you deserve. Can't take you to fancy restaurants or buy you expensive things or be someone your board approves of. All I have is me, and that's not enough. Who says it's not enough? Everyone. The internet, your board chairman, Morrison. Hell, even I know it's not enough. Well, you're all wrong. Evelyn's voice was fierce. You're enough for Sophie. You're enough for me. The only person you're not enough for is yourself. Ryan didn't have an answer for that. Stay at the condo as long as you need, Evelyn said quietly. The lawyers will keep the press away. And when you're ready to stop running, I'll be here. She hung up before Ryan could respond. He stood in the kitchen of the borrowed condo, staring at his phone, feeling like he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life but not knowing how to fix it. In the living room, Sophie laughed at something on TV. The sound was pure and happy, and completely oblivious to the fact that her dad was falling apart. Ryan wiped his eyes and went to sit beside her. Daddy, why are you sad? I'm not sad, kiddo. You're doing the quiet thing. Ryan pulled her close. Just thinking. About Miss Evelyn? Yeah. Sophie was quiet for a moment. Are you going to stop being friends? I don't know. Emma's mom said you have to fight for people you love, even when it's hard. Ryan looked down at his daughter. When did Emma's mom say that? When Emma's dad had to go away for work and Emma was sad. Her mom said real love means staying even when things are hard. Out of the mouths of children came wisdom that adults spent lifetimes trying to learn. You're pretty smart, you know that? Ryan said. I know. I get it from you. Despite everything, Ryan smiled. They stayed at the condo for 3 days. The press eventually got bored and moved on to the next story. Ryan's phone stopped exploding with messages from strangers. Life started to return to something approximating normal, except nothing felt normal anymore. Sophie asked about Evelyn constantly. When were they going to see her again? Could they go to her house on Saturday? Did Miss Evelyn still like them? Ryan didn't have answers that wouldn't break his daughter's heart. On the 4th day, Mrs. Chen showed up at the condo. Ryan had no idea how she'd found them until she explained that Patricia had given her the address. Of course she did, Ryan muttered. Mrs. Chen took one look at him and shook her head. You look terrible. Thanks. Sophie, go play in the other room. I need to talk to your father. Sophie, sensing the tone adults used when serious conversations were about to happen, took Mr. Whiskers and disappeared. Mrs. Chen sat Ryan down at the kitchen table. You're being stupid again. I'm being realistic. Realistic is another word for coward when you're too scared to try. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You think because you don't have money, you don't deserve to be happy. You think because your life is hard, you can't accept help. You think because you're scared, you should run. Mrs. Chen's voice was stern. I understand all of that, and it's still stupid. Ryan stared at the table. What if I let Sophie get attached and then it falls apart? What if Evelyn realizes this was a mistake? What if the sun doesn't come up tomorrow? What if aliens invade? What if all your fears are just excuses? Mrs. Chen leaned forward. That woman sent lawyers to protect you, gave you a place to hide, calls every day to check on Sophie, and you think she's going to wake up and decide you're not worth it? People change their minds. Sarah didn't change her mind. She died. That's different. The bluntness of it made Ryan flinch. I know she didn't change her mind. Do you? Because you're acting like everyone you love is going to leave, like happiness has an expiration date. Mrs. Chen's expression softened. Evelyn isn't Sarah, and you're not honoring Sarah's memory by refusing to live your life. Ryan felt tears burning his eyes again. I don't know how to do this. Nobody knows how to do it. You just do it anyway. She stood up. Now, I'm taking Sophie back to the apartment. The reporters are gone. You need to decide if you're going to keep hiding or if you're going to fight for what you want. It's not that simple. It's exactly that simple. You just don't want it to be. After they left, Ryan sat alone in the pristine condo and thought about everything Mrs. Chen had said. About Sarah and fear and expiration dates on happiness. His phone buzzed. A message from Evelyn. Sophie starts school again tomorrow. I had security do a sweep. No reporters within 3 blocks. She'll be safe. Ryan stared at the message. Even when he was pushing her away, Evelyn was still protecting them. He typed and deleted 3 responses before finally settling on, "Thank you." Her reply came immediately. "I miss you." Ryan's fingers hovered over the keyboard. He wanted to say he missed her too, wanted to apologize for running, wanted to ask if they could start over. Instead, he wrote, "I need time to think. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere." That night, Ryan couldn't sleep. He lay in the guest bed of the borrowed condo and stared at the ceiling, replaying every moment with Evelyn. The rain, the early morning workouts, the terrible coffee and the good coffee. Sophie reading her dragon story. The kiss at the gala. All of it felt impossible. All of it felt right. Around 2 a.m., his phone rang. Morrison. "You better be dying," Ryan answered. "Close enough. The Madison Street job fell through. Developer pulled funding." Ryan sat up. "What does that mean?" "Means I got nothing for you until late next month at the earliest, maybe longer." Morrison sighed. "I'm sorry, man. I know you need the work." "Yeah, I do." After Morrison hung up, Ryan did the math in his head. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Electric bill the week after. Sophie needed new shoes. The truck was making a sound that probably meant expensive repairs. Without the therapy sessions and without construction work, he was looking at financial disaster. His phone sat on the nightstand, Evelyn's last message still glowing on the screen. "I'm not going anywhere." Ryan picked it up and stared at it for a long time. He could call her, could ask for help, could let her use her resources to solve his problems like she'd been trying to do all along. Or he could figure it out himself, like he always had. Pride was a hell of a thing. Sometimes it kept you standing, sometimes it was the only thing that broke your fall. And sometimes it was just another word for being too scared to accept that you couldn't do everything alone. Ryan made a decision. It probably wasn't the smart one, but it was honest, and honesty was the only currency he had left. He got dressed, left the condo, and drove through the empty Seattle streets to the only place he knew he'd find answers. The building was dark, except for the 40th floor. Ryan used the elevator code Evelyn had given him months ago, surprised it still worked. The doors opened and he stepped into the hallway. Evelyn's apartment door was unlocked. He found her in the living room, sitting by the windows, wearing pajamas and holding a cup of tea. She looked exhausted. She looked beautiful. She looked up when he walked in and something crossed her face, relief, hope, fear all mixed together. "Hi," Ryan said. "Hi. I'm sorry for running. I know. I'm scared this won't work." "Me too." "I don't know how to be what you need." "Then let me tell you." Evelyn set down her tea and stood. "I need someone who shows up, who tells me the truth even when it's hard, who makes me laugh and pushes me to be better and loves me even when I'm difficult." She walked toward him. "I need you, Ryan, exactly as you are." I don't have money. Can't give you the life you're used to. I have enough money for both of us. What I don't have is someone who sees me instead of my net worth. Someone who treats Sophie like she matters. Someone who makes me feel real. Evelyn stopped in front of him. You keep saying we're from different worlds. Maybe we are. But I don't want my world anymore if you're not in it. Ryan felt something breaking apart in his chest. All the fear, all the pride, all the walls he'd built to protect himself from exactly this moment. I lost my job, he said. Again, I'm broke. I have nothing to offer you except a third-floor walk-up and a daughter who thinks you hung the moon. That's everything I want. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow too. And the day after. And every day until you believe it. Evelyn's eyes were bright with tears. I love you, Ryan Carter. I love your terrible coffee and your stubborn pride and the way you make pancakes for Sophie. I love how you show up even when you're exhausted. I love that you see me as Evelyn, not Ms. Sinclair. Her voice broke. And I'm asking you to please stop running and just let me love you. Ryan had spent 3 years building walls around his heart, had convinced himself that loving someone meant risking everything and losing more. But standing in Evelyn's living room, looking at the woman who'd sent lawyers and safe houses and daily messages checking on his daughter, he realized that maybe the bigger risk was never trying at all. I love you too, he said quietly, and that terrifies me. Good. I'd be worried if it didn't. Ryan stepped forward and kissed her. It wasn't like the kiss at the gala. That had been public and performative and brave. This was private and real and vulnerable. When they pulled apart, Evelyn was crying and smiling at the same time. So what now? Ryan asked. Now we figure it out, together, like I keep saying. I'm going to mess this up. Probably. I'll mess it up too. That's how relationships work. I've never done this before. Not like this. Neither have I. Evelyn took his hand. But I'm willing to try if you are. Ryan thought about Sophie asking when they'd see Evelyn again, about Mrs. Chen calling him stupid, about the knight in his stories who was brave enough to keep showing up. Yeah, he said, I'm willing to try. They spent the rest of the night talking, about fears and futures and how to navigate two worlds that didn't quite fit but might be able to if they tried hard enough, about Sophie and what to tell her, about the press and the board and all the complications waiting for them. But mostly they just sat together on the couch, holding hands, believing that maybe love was enough to bridge the impossible distance between where they'd started and where they wanted to go. When morning came, Ryan called Sophie at the apartment where Mrs. Chen was getting her ready for school. Hey kiddo, you okay? I'm okay. Mrs. Chen made the good pancakes, the ones you make. Ryan smiled. Listen, I'm with Miss Evelyn right now. We're going to come pick you up from school together. That okay? Sophie's squeal of delight was answer enough. After he hung up, Evelyn was watching him with soft eyes. Ready for this? She asked. No, but I'm doing it anyway. That's all anyone can do. They drove to Madison Elementary together, arriving just as school let out. Sophie saw them through the fence, and her entire face lit up. She ran over, backpack bouncing, and threw herself at both of them. You came back, she said to Ryan. I came back. And you brought Miss Evelyn. I did. Sophie looked between them, her 6-year-old brain processing. Are you friends again? Ryan glanced at Evelyn, who nodded. Yeah, he said. We're friends again. Actually, we're more than friends. Like boyfriend and girlfriend. Something like that. Good. Sophie grabbed both their hands. Can we get ice cream? Evelyn laughed. Absolutely. They walked to a nearby ice cream shop, the three of them together. And if people stared or whispered or took photos, Ryan didn't notice. He was too busy watching Sophie explain the difference between chocolate chip and cookies and cream to Evelyn with intense seriousness. This was what mattered. Not the money or the worlds or the complications. Just this. Just them. And maybe, impossibly, it would be enough. The ice cream didn't solve anything, but it bought them an afternoon where the world felt manageable. Sophie sat between Ryan and Evelyn at a small table outside the shop, chocolate smeared on her face, asking questions faster than either of them could answer. So if you're boyfriend and girlfriend, does that mean Miss Evelyn comes to our house now? Ryan and Evelyn exchanged glances. Sometimes, Evelyn said carefully. Can she come tonight? Sophie, Ryan started. Please, I want to show her my room, and my drawing of the dragon, and the spelling test I got a gold star on. Evelyn looked at Ryan, leaving the decision to him. He thought about his cramped apartment with its leaking window and secondhand furniture, thought about how small it would feel compared to the places Evelyn was used to. Then he looked at Sophie's hopeful face and realized his daughter didn't care about any of that. Yeah, he said, she can come tonight. Sophie cheered and went back to her ice cream. Evelyn's hand found Ryan's under the table and squeezed. That evening, Ryan watched Evelyn climb the 3 flights of stairs to his apartment and tried not to feel embarrassed about the peeling paint in the stairwell or the broken elevator or the way the whole building smelled like someone was always cooking onions. Evelyn didn't seem to notice. She was too busy listening to Sophie chatter about everything and nothing, her small hand gripping Evelyn's like she was afraid the woman might disappear. Inside the apartment, Sophie gave Evelyn the full tour, which took about 90 seconds because there wasn't much to see. But Evelyn acted like every crayon drawing on the refrigerator was a masterpiece, like the tiny bedroom with its hand-me-down furniture was the most important room she'd ever seen. This is where Daddy tells me stories, Sophie said, pointing to the chair beside her bed. The night stories? Evelyn asked. Yeah. Do you want to hear one? More than anything. So they settled in, Sophie in bed, Evelyn in the story chair, Ryan leaning against the doorframe, and Sophie retold the night story in her own words, adding details Ryan had never included about a princess who could fight dragons herself and didn't need rescuing. Evelyn listened with complete attention, asking questions, laughing at the right moments. And watching them together, Ryan felt something settle in his chest that had been unsettled for years. This could work. It was messy and complicated and completely illogical, but it could work. After Sophie fell asleep, Ryan and Evelyn sat in the living room with cups of tea. The couch sagged in the middle and the TV still only worked if you hit it right. But none of that seemed to matter. Your apartment is perfect, Evelyn said quietly. Ryan laughed. It's falling apart. It's full of love. That's more than most places have. You don't have to say that. I'm not just saying it. Evelyn set down her tea. My penthouse is gorgeous and expensive and completely empty. This place has Sophie's drawings on every wall, has memories in every corner, has life. She met his eyes. I'd trade everything I own for what you've built here. You say that now. Wait until winter when the heat doesn't work right, and we're all wearing 3 layers inside. Then I'll buy you extra blankets. Evelyn, I know you don't want me solving problems with money, but buying blankets isn't fixing your life. It's just keeping the people I care about warm. Ryan didn't have an argument for that. This is going to be hard, you know. We're going to fight about money and pride and all the ways our lives don't fit. Probably, but we'll figure it out. Evelyn shifted closer to him on the couch. I'm not expecting perfect, Ryan. I'm just expecting us to try. What if trying isn't enough? Then we'll try harder. She made it sound simple, like love was just a choice you kept making every day. Maybe it was. Ryan kissed her, slow and gentle, and let himself believe that maybe they could actually build something real out of all this impossible mess. The next morning brought reality crashing back in the form of a phone call from Patricia. Mr. Carter, I'm calling on behalf of the board. They've requested a meeting with you and Ms. Sinclair. Today, if possible. Ryan's stomach dropped. What kind of meeting? They didn't specify, but given recent events, I imagine they have concerns about the relationship and its impact on the company. Of course they did. Ryan looked at Evelyn, who was making coffee in his tiny kitchen like she belonged there. When? 2 p.m. I'll send a car. After Patricia hung up, Ryan told Evelyn about the meeting. Her expression went carefully blank. They're going to ask you to end this, she said. Probably. And if they do? Ryan walked over and took her hand. Then I'll tell them to go to hell. Politely, but still. Evelyn's smile was small, but genuine. That should be entertaining to watch. The Sinclair Technologies headquarters was downtown in a building that made Ryan's apartment look even more pathetic by comparison. Security, elevators that actually worked, conference rooms with views that cost more than most people's yearly salary. Ryan felt completely out of place in his work clothes and scuffed boots. Evelyn, in her business suit, fit perfectly. But she kept his hand in hers all the way to the 20th floor, making it clear they were in this together. The board was already assembled when they walked in. 10 people in expensive suits with expressions that ranged from curious to hostile. Richard Thornton sat at the head of the table, looking like he'd been waiting for this moment since the gala. Evelyn, Mr. Carter, thank you for coming. Richard's tone suggested it hadn't been a request. Please sit. They sat. Ryan felt every eye on him, evaluating, judging, finding him lacking. Let's be frank, Richard began. Your relationship has created a PR situation that the board finds concerning. The press speculation, the questions about Mr. Carter's intentions, the distraction from company business, all of it reflects poorly on Sinclair Technologies. With respect, Evelyn said, her voice level, my personal life is not the board's concern. It is when it affects stock prices. We've seen a 2% dip since the photos from the gala went public. 2% is barely a fluctuation, and it's already recovering. Nevertheless, Richard's eyes shifted to Ryan. Mr. Carter, I'm sure you understand our position. Evelyn is the face of this company. Her reputation is our reputation, and right now that reputation is being questioned. Ryan met his gaze steadily. Questioned how? There are concerns about your motivations, your background, whether this relationship is appropriate given the power dynamic. You mean whether I'm using her for money? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Ryan leaned forward. Let me save you some time. I'm not after Evelyn's money. I don't want her company. I don't care about her stock prices or her reputation or any of the things you people spend your time obsessing over. I care about her. That's it. How convenient, one of the other board members said, a woman with severe glasses and a skeptical expression. A construction worker with financial problems falls in love with a billionaire. Forgive us for being cynical. I don't need your forgiveness. I need you to stay out of our personal lives. The room went very quiet. Richard's expression hardened. Mr. Carter, I don't think you understand the situation you're in. We have the power to make your life very difficult. Richard, Evelyn's voice cut through the tension like a knife. That's enough. Evelyn, we're trying to protect you. From what? From being happy? From finding someone who actually gives a damn about me instead of what I can do for them? She stood up, and Ryan had never seen her look more like the CEO everyone feared. I have spent 10 years building this company, 10 years sacrificing everything for quarterly earnings and shareholder value and making sure you all get richer. I nearly died in an accident 4 months ago, and not one of you visited me in the hospital. Not one. The board members shifted uncomfortably. Ryan showed up, Evelyn continued. A stranger who owed me nothing showed up and helped me when I needed it most. He pushed me to get better when everyone else was content to let me stay broken. He made me remember that I'm a person, not just a profit margin. Her voice shook slightly. So if you think I'm going to let you bully him or me into ending this relationship, you're mistaken. Evelyn, be reasonable, Sweats. I am being reasonable. You're being controlling. She looked at each board member in turn. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to continue running this company the way I always have, excellently, and I'm going to continue seeing Ryan. If you have a problem with that, I invite you to find a new CEO. I'm sure there are plenty of qualified candidates who will be happy to work 100 hours a week and die alone for your approval. The silence was absolute. Richard looked like he'd swallowed something unpleasant. You'd really walk away? He asked finally. Without hesitation, this company doesn't own me, and it definitely doesn't own my heart. Another board member, an older man who'd been quiet until now, cleared his throat. Perhaps we've overstepped. Evelyn's personal life is, as she says, her own business. As long as company performance remains strong, which it has, Evelyn interjected, then perhaps we should refocus on actual business matters. Richard looked like he wanted to argue, but he was outvoted and he knew it. Fine. But if this becomes a distraction, it won't, Evelyn said firmly. Are we done here? They were dismissed like children who'd misbehaved. Ryan followed Evelyn out of the conference room, down the elevator, and outside where she finally let out the breath she'd been holding. That was terrifying, she admitted. You were incredible. I was winging it. I had no idea if they'd actually back down. What would you have done if they called your bluff? If they'd asked you to choose? Evelyn looked at him with absolute certainty. I would have chosen you. Every time.
Ryan pulled her close and kissed her in front of the Sinclair Technologies building, not caring who saw or what they thought, because Evelyn had just put her entire career on the line for him, and that kind of love deserved to be acknowledged. When they pulled apart, Evelyn was smiling. So, that's handled. What's next? Next, we figure out the actual hard part, which is how we actually build a life together. The boring everyday stuff that doesn't involve dramatic board meetings or grand gestures. I'm pretty good at boring everyday stuff, and Ryan laughed. You've never been boring a day in your life. Then I'll learn, for you. The learning curve was steep for both of them. Evelyn tried to adapt to Ryan's world, shopping at discount grocery stores, taking the bus when her driver wasn't available, understanding that some problems couldn't be solved by throwing money at them. She was terrible at it at first, offering to pay for things Ryan couldn't afford and not understanding why that made him uncomfortable. I'm trying to help, she said after Ryan gently refused her offer to cover his rent for the third time. I know, but I need to do some things myself for my own pride. Your pride is exhausting. Yeah, well, it's all I've got sometimes. They fought about it more than once, about money and independence and the invisible lines between helping and fixing. But they kept talking, kept trying, kept showing up even when it was hard. Ryan tried to adapt to Evelyn's world too, attending company events, meeting her colleagues, learning to navigate conversations about stocks and mergers and things he'd never cared about before. He was out of his depth, and everyone knew it, but Evelyn never let him feel alone in those spaces. You don't have to understand it all, she told him after a particularly brutal dinner with some investors. You just have to be yourself, that's enough. Those people think I'm a joke. Those people are boring. You're interesting. I know which one I prefer. Sophie was the easiest part of the equation. She loved having Evelyn around, loved the Saturdays that turned into full weekends, loved teaching Evelyn how to play games and draw pictures and be silly in ways billionaire CEOs apparently weren't supposed to be. Miss Evelyn's funny, Sophie announced one evening. She snorts when she laughs really hard. Evelyn, who'd been trying to maintain some dignity, gave up and laughed until she snorted again, which made Sophie dissolve into giggles. Ryan watched them from the kitchen and felt his chest expand with something that felt dangerously close to complete happiness. Mrs. Chen observed all of this with her characteristic bluntness. You two are still stupid sometimes, she told them, but less stupid than before. That's progress. 3 months after the gala, Morrison called with news about a new project, a sustainable housing development that needed experienced crew leads. The pay was better than anything Ryan had made before, and it was steady work for at least a year. There's one catch, Morrison said. The developer specifically requested you. Ryan's stomach dropped. Why? Because Evelyn Sinclair sits on their board and apparently recommended you. But before you get pissed, the guy did his homework. Checked your references, looked at your past work, talked to people you've worked with. He said you got the job on merit, not connections. Evelyn just made sure he knew you existed. It was a careful line, the kind Evelyn had learned to walk. Not fixing his life, just opening a door and letting him walk through it on his own. Ryan called her immediately. Thank you. For what? You know for what. I just mentioned your name. You got the job yourself. Still, thank you. You're welcome. Now stop being weird about accepting help. I'll try. Liar. But they were both smiling. The job started 2 weeks later, and it was everything Ryan had hoped for. Challenging work, good pay, a crew that respected him. For the first time in years, he wasn't choosing between bills, wasn't laying awake at night doing impossible math, wasn't running on empty and prayers. He could breathe. Sophie noticed the change immediately. Daddy, you're not tired anymore. I'm still tired, kiddo, but it's a better kind of tired. Because of Miss Evelyn? Because of a lot of things. But yeah, she's part of it. 6 months after the gala, Ryan came home to find Evelyn and Sophie in the kitchen covered in flour, attempting to make cookies from scratch. The kitchen was a disaster. The cookies were questionable at best. Both of them were laughing so hard they could barely breathe. What happened here? Ryan asked. We're baking, Sophie announced. Miss Evelyn said she wanted to learn how. How's it going? Evelyn held up a cookie that looked more like a rock. I think we invented a new building material. Ryan kissed her flour-covered nose. Better stick to buying cookies. Quitter!
They ate terrible cookies and ordered pizza and watched a movie on the TV that still needed to be hit at the right angle. Sophie fell asleep between them on the couch, Mr. Whiskers tucked under her arm. "I love this," Evelyn said quietly. "Terrible cookies and broken TVs? This. Us. The normal, boring, everyday stuff." She looked at him. "I was wrong before. This isn't boring. This is everything." Ryan kissed her softly, careful not to wake Sophie. "Yeah, it is." A year after they met in the rain, Evelyn suggested they look at houses together. Not to buy, she clarified quickly when she saw Ryan's expression. Just to look. See what's out there. Dream a little. They took Sophie to open houses on Sunday afternoons, walking through spaces that felt both possible and impossible. Sophie would run through empty rooms picking which one would be hers, while Ryan and Evelyn discussed things like school districts and commute times and whether they needed a yard. "This is nice," Ryan said in one kitchen that had actual counter space, "but we can't afford it. We could if we combined—" "Evelyn, I know, your pride. I'm just saying the option exists." It was an old argument, worn smooth by repetition, but it didn't have the sharp edges it used to. They'd learned to navigate it, to find the space between Ryan's need for independence and Evelyn's desire to share everything with him. "What if we split it?" Ryan suggested. "I pay what I can. You cover the rest. We both own it equally." Evelyn considered this. "That works for me if it works for you." "It works for me." They found a house in Ballard. Not too big, not too small, with a yard for Sophie and a kitchen where they could make pancakes together. It was more than Ryan could have afforded alone, but less than Evelyn would have chosen if money was no object. It was perfect because it was theirs. The day they moved in, Mrs. Chen arrived with a plant and her usual bluntness. "This is better. More space. Good neighborhood." She looked at Ryan and Evelyn. "You two did good. Finally." Sophie ran through the new house yelling about her bigger room in the yard where they could, maybe, possibly, eventually get a dog. Ryan and Evelyn stood in the empty living room surrounded by boxes and felt the weight of what they'd built. "We did it," Evelyn said. "Yeah, we really did. Are you happy?" Ryan looked at her, this woman who'd gone from a stranger in a wheelchair to the person who made his life make sense. "Happier than I ever thought I could be." "Good. Because I'm not done yet." She pulled out a small box and Ryan's heart stopped. "Evelyn, let me talk first." She opened the box, revealing a simple ring. "I know we do things backwards. We said I love you before we went on a real date. We moved in together before we'd been together a year. We built a life before we figured out how to make it work." She took his hand. "So let's keep doing things our way. Marry me, Ryan Carter. Not because it makes sense, not because we have it all figured out, but because I want to spend the rest of my life eating terrible cookies and fixing broken TVs and being real with you." "Banchas." Ryan felt tears burning in his eyes. "You're supposed to let me ask you. Since when do we do things the way we're supposed to?" "Fair point." He pulled her close. "Yes. Obviously, yes." Sophie, who'd been eavesdropping from the hallway, screamed and ran in to hug both of them. "Does this mean Miss Evelyn is going to be my mom?" Ryan and Evelyn looked at each other. "If that's okay with you," Evelyn said carefully. Sophie's answer was to hug Evelyn so hard they both nearly fell over. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony at the house in Ballard. Just close friends and family, Morrison and his wife, Mrs. Chen, Patricia, who'd become more friend than assistant, Sophie as the world's most enthusiastic flower girl, and a handful of people from both their lives who'd learned to coexist in the space they'd created. The press tried to make it a spectacle. The board tried to make it a statement, but Ryan and Evelyn had learned to tune out the noise and focus on what mattered. Each other, Sophie, the life they were building one imperfect day at a time. During the ceremony, when they exchanged vows they'd written themselves, Ryan said, "You taught me that accepting help isn't weakness, that love doesn't diminish when it's shared, that I'm enough exactly as I am. I promise to keep showing up, keep being honest, and keep making you terrible coffee for the rest of our lives." Evelyn said, "You taught me that power isn't about control, that real strength is vulnerability, that a home is built with love, not money. I promise to keep learning, keep trying, and keep loving you even when you're being stubborn about accepting help."
Sophie, standing between them, added her own vow. I promise to love you both forever and ever, and to take care of the dog we're definitely getting. Everyone laughed. Ryan and Evelyn exchanged rings. They kissed while Sophie cheered and Mrs. Chen dabbed at her eyes and Morrison wolf whistled from the back. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't smooth. But it was real. And it was theirs. That night, after the guests left and Sophie was asleep in her new room, Ryan and Evelyn stood in their backyard under the stars. Seattle was quiet around them, the city that had brought them together in the rain now witnessing what they'd become. You know what I realized? Evelyn said. What? That day in the rain, when you stopped to help me, I thought you were saving me, but you weren't. We were saving each other. Ryan pulled her close. Yeah, I think you're right. I'm always right. You should know that by now. There's the woman I married. She laughed and kissed him, and in that moment Ryan understood something fundamental about love. It wasn't about grand gestures or dramatic rescues. It wasn't about one person saving another or worlds magically aligning. It was about showing up, being honest, choosing each other every single day even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. It was about a construction worker and a CEO who had no business working but did anyway because they were brave enough to try. It was about a 6-year-old girl who got the family she deserved. It was about believing that love could bridge any distance if you were willing to walk halfway and meet in the middle. 2 years after the wedding, Sophie asked Ryan to tell her the night story again, but this time she wanted to know how it ended. How do you want it to end? Ryan asked. Sophie thought about it seriously. I think the night should get to be happy. Not because he fought a dragon, just because he was brave enough to help people even when everyone else walked away. Ryan looked at Evelyn, who was sitting beside them, and smiled. I think you're right. I think that's exactly how it should end. And the princess he helped? She helps him right back. Because that's what real love does. It shows up for each other. Sophie nodded, satisfied. That's a good ending. Yeah, kiddo, it really is. Outside, rain began to fall on Seattle like it always did, washing the streets clean and making everything new again. Inside the house in Ballard, a family that shouldn't have worked but did stayed warm and safe and together. Because sometimes the greatest love stories don't start with a fairy tale. They start with a stranger refusing to walk away in the middle of the rain. They're built on honesty and pancakes and terrible coffee and the courage to keep showing up even when the world says it won't work. They're built on believing that love isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. And real, messy, complicated love, the kind that fights and forgives and grows and tries, is always worth it in the end. Ryan Carter had spent years thinking happiness had an expiration date, that he'd used up his share when Sarah was alive, that he didn't deserve more than survival. But looking at his wife and his daughter and the life they'd built together, he finally understood something Sarah would have wanted him to know all along. Everyone deserves a second chance at happiness. Everyone deserves to be loved exactly as they are. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let yourself be saved while saving someone else. The rain continued outside. Inside, the Carter family was home. And that was enough. That was everything.